Hey folks, it's Kodey Stoffer with Playmakers Corner, here to tell you about Code Red coaching. Competing in athletics means you've lifted the weights, you've watched film, and you've got the passion. Problem is, that's what everyone else in the state has done. Perfect your game by honing in on your mental performance with Code Red coaching. Whether you are a team or an individual, Code Red coaching has the tools to create mentally solid habits and set up you or your team for success. Find Code Red Coaching at coderedcoaching.com or call 720-979-1914 to learn more today. That's coderedcoaching.com or 720-979-1914 today. Now back to the show. Hey, listeners. It is your showrunner, I'm going to say your host for this episode, Kodey Stoffer here. And you know, and I know, it is Colorado football season here. It's football season in general, and we are back with our legendary recaps here. And, we are actually going to talk about week 0 as well as week 1 on this episode. And we're going to have some newer voices here. Maybe you listened to their interviews. But, Gideon helped us out last season. You heard him before. And we also have Gino with some recaps. And this is how we're going to do it here. So the way we have it divvied up, at least through these first 2 weeks, as in week 0 and week 1, is we have it split up where each one of us is talking about a different classification. So myself here, I'm going to talk about what happened in 1A for weeks 0 and 1. And then I'm going to pass the mic over to Gino, who's going to take us through week 0 in 2A. And then a friendly face and a familiar one at that, Gideon here, is going to talk about 3A, week 0 and week 1, and take us through each of the games day by day. And then we are going to talk about, what happened in 4A. That is back to me. And then we are going to talk about what happened in 5A. However, what we're going to do before any of these segments is we are going to talk about the games that we attended. And for those of you that don't know, we do post our games of the week, which are the games that we plan on attending, barring any illnesses, which do happen, or car problems, what have you. We do plan on attending those games. So be sure to check us out on Instagram for that post for our games of the week. But those games of the week are going to include the week 0 matchup of Mountain Vista versus Ralston Valley, and then the week 1 matchups of Holyoke versus Strasburg, Berthoud versus Timnath, Poudre versus Rock Canyon, and Creek versus Ralston Valley. All of those going before the classification that we're talking about. So, by that train of thought here, if we start in 1A, then it's only natural that I talk about the week 1 matchup between Holyoke and Strasburg. So, let's drive all the way out east to Holyoke, Colorado, which is only like 30 minutes from the Nebraskan border here, and talk about the Dragons versus Strasburg here. Now, Strasburg will start with the football in this game, but the Dragons actually force them to go 3 and out and punt, and then start from their own 36. The home crowd is into it, and they are excited and buzzing for this Holyoke season that has so many returners coming back, and Holyoke was actually behind Strasburg in our power rankings heading into this game. But I had a feeling that these Dragons were going to make some big moves this game. And they come out and they do solid here. They get a first down. They have a flood concept here where quarterback Wyatt Sprague finds Tyson Mossentine here, and he gets all the way to the other 31-yard line. They then get the benefit of a pass interference that gets to the 11, but another flag pushes them back to the 18. And just a few plays later, with a few losses and a drop, it ends up being 4th and 17 on the 20-yard line here. And Holyoke is going to go for it. They are not going to kick the ball. And they snap it to Wyatt out of the shotgun, who loads up and just fires one into his younger brother, I assume, Reed Sprague, for the touchdown on 4th and 17 to put Holyoke up 7-0 here in the first quarter. Strasburg, they are looking to respond here, but unfortunately go 3 and out. That is ended by a drop on a screen here. So they punt, and Holyoke gets a decent return to start on the 40-yard line going in. And right off the bat, it looks like they're riding this momentum very strongly here as they have a handoff out of pistol that sets up 2nd and 3. They draw Strasburg off sides and they get a first down, but then they commit a personal foul that pushes them almost back to midfield. There's a short throw, and then Wyatt just catches, loads up, and then drops it right into the breadbasket of Bryson Dirks, who gets all the way to the 8-yard line. Now on first down, they do have a pitch that is swallowed up, a short run, and then on 3rd and 5, they get stuffed. They take a timeout on 4th and 3, but, they call a quarterback keeper, and Strasburg is ready for that. Number 33, Ethan Freeman, just gets right through the line and slows down Wyatt from behind and is eventually gang tackled here to force a turnover on downs, giving Strasburg the ball on their own 4-yard line. They are backed up against the wall here, but a toss right and a penalty actually gives them a ton of breathing room and pushes them all the way to the 27-yard line. On this next play that will start the second quarter here, that does take us to the end of the first quarter. Landon Martin takes a deep shot downfield, and it's a touchdown that is just dropped. I mean, the receiver wins this foot race and just can't bring it in. And I feel like that kind of does suck some of the wind out of this Strasburg offense. They eventually get to 4th and 1, but Wyatt Sprague will break up the pass on that 4th down and force a turnover on downs and gives Holyoke the ball on the 37-yard line going in. Now on this first play, they drop back to pass, but Strasburg, they get through the line here, and number 79, Alex Dickens, a.k.a. Al Dickens, as well as number 57, who is Tristan Gobble. They get through the line, and they are approaching fast on Wyatt Sprague, and they force a terrible pass that is intercepted by DJ Cannon, number 68, and gives Strasburg the ball on the 49-yard line going in. Now, on this opening play, Martin rolls out right and finds number 18, who turns upfield, but upon contact with number 62 for this Holyoke squad, Paul Smith actually ends up fumbling the football, and it is recovered by number 3, Bryson Dirks, and gives Holyoke the ball on their own 45-yard line. Now, unfortunately, they don't make anything out of this turnover, so it's basically a wash here, as they will end up going 3 and out, including a drop on 3rd down and punting on 4th and 7. Now, Strasburg has 8 minutes and 22 seconds left in the half, where they get a run blown up, and then Reed Sprague on the next play levels the ball carrier, and it is 3rd and 20. The next play doesn't happen, and, well, nothing goes on the next play is what I should say, and it is another punt. So they exchange 3 and outs here, and the Dragons end up on their own 16 with a very friendly Strasburg bounce on the punt. Now, there's a low screen pass that goes for 2 before on the next play, Wyatt Sprague, he rolls out, he buys some time, and he puts it on the top shelf where only his receiver can get it, but he does not come down with it. On 3rd down, he does hit Reed on a hitch, who muscles all the way to the 34-yard line for a first down. Now, Sprague keeps and gets to the 38 on the next play, and following an incompletion on 2nd down, the Dragons have 3rd and 5 on their own side, and Holyoke calls a quarterback keeper, bringing around the tackle and the guard, and once again, number 62, whose name I do not have on this list, or maybe I'm just bad at seeing numbers, but he makes an excellent seal block, and Wyatt Sprague does the rest here, winning with a head full of steam, zooming down the left sideline, and putting the Dragons up even more, 14-0, with 4 minutes and 12 seconds in the second quarter. Now, Strasburg, they get the ball here. They're on their own 29-yard line. They have a rollout for a yard. Then there's a drop on the next play. And then on 3rd and 9, they have a quick pass for 4 before a quick tackle by Reed Sprague forces a punt. Now, Holyoke with the ball on their own 39 on a solid return and just 2.5 minutes left in the half. They try and, maybe make this a 3-score game prior to halftime, but Al Dickens wins up front and forces a run for only 1 yard. Now, there are a couple of short plays here, but then there's an underthrown pass on 3rd and 7 that is broken it up by number 23 on Strasburg, Thomas Devlin. And on 4th and 6, Holyoke ends up punting. Now, Strasburg on their own 30 with a minute 12 left. They roll out left, and Martin tries to direct his receiver downfield and loads up, but Reed Sprague is waiting for this and intercepts the football, and Holyoke has the ball on the 34 going in now. There's a pass for number 9 that comes in low, then an overthrow on a corner route, and then on 3rd and 1 with 31 seconds left, Sprague steps up and sidearms one to number 4 Tyson Mossentine for a first down to the 11 and gets out of bounds and stops the clock. Now on this next play, Wyatt Sprague manipulates the pocket here and throws to a wide open number 6 Trey Oakley for 6 for 6. The PAT is no good, and Holyoke is up 20-0 at halftime. This game just is kind of warranted by big plays by Holyoke and, just a very stagnant offense. Lots of inopportune drops for Strasburg and just not really being able to establish the run game here. I mean, on the night, they would only be able to average a very underwhelming 3.9 yards per carry. But regardless, to start the half, Holyoke does start at their own 22. And, the blitz gets through for Strasburg, but Tyson Mossentine still fights for 4 yards anyway. Now, on 2nd and 6, they do get a toss right that is blown up by Landon Martin, who actually had 2 tackles for loss in this game, both on sweeping or outside plays. And then every member of the defensive line gets a hand on Sprague before finally bringing him down at the 20 and forcing a Holyoke punt. Now, Strasburg on the 46 going in. It looks like a bad snap forces a run left for 2. And then there is an incomplete pass, and, the corners now are just draping the Strasburg wide receivers, which forces a sweep right on 3rd and 8 that puts a 4th and 3 here, and a Devlin zone left run actually picks up a first and some all the way to the 28, which is great. Now, on the next play, Landon Martin keeps the play alive with his legs and actually gets flushed out right, sheds and spins his way all the way to the 12 for a 16-yard gain. Now, the next run play, nothing happens, and Strasburg rolls outright, and Landon tries to fire one in, but number 23, Colby Weber, makes a great diving interception to just kill the momentum of a great Strasburg scoring opportunity. But this does still have Holyoke on their own 4 with 6 minutes left in the third, and this is a great opportunity to maybe, put the boot on Strasburg's neck here. But, they kind of kill themselves with some penalties here before ending up on 3rd and 8. And then Devlin, oddly enough, for Strasburg, goes down with a non-contact injury before Holyoke has to eventually punt from their own end zone. And this great opportunity allows Austin Velasco to catch in stride and get all the way to the 21-yard line. Strasburg still can't get anything established on the ground on this opening play, with Reed Sprague blowing it up before Colby Weber gets another pick on an overthrow by Landon Martin. You can tell that he's just trying to get something going here, but it's just playing right into Holyoke's strengths here as a secondary. And you have the younger Weber here, who's only a sophomore, having basically his coming out party in this game. Shout out to Colby. Got to talk to him after the game and congratulate him on a job well done. And I also got to talk to Cash as well. He, did his thing, but was definitely, keyed in on more throughout this game by the Strasburg offense. Now, Holyoke, they end up on their own 20 because it was a touchback here. And, they pick up a first down eventually after forcing Strasburg to jump. But then there's a bad toss, and they lose 7 here. And, Wyatt Sprague, he hits an out route to end the third quarter here. Now, to start the fourth, they have 3rd and 4 on the 24-yard line. And, a pass interference happens, and, it does not get called. So Holyoke will go for it, and Sprague sees nothing he likes, and he makes a move to freeze a defender and gets to the 13 for the first down. Now, there is a read option that is, expected by the defense. They hold them to 1 here, and eventually they are set up at 3rd and 4, with 3rd and 4, I should say, on the 8 or 9-yard line, when the running back fumbles the ball, and number 18, who is trying to look for his redemption arc here, Paul Smith, actually dives on the football here and gives Strasburg the ball in the 9 and ending a Holyoke scoring opportunity that would have definitely ended this game. Now, on the next play, Holyoke does blitz the edge, but Landon Martin escapes and gains 5 here. Strasburg then has another run left for 3. And then Landon looks from his second read to a check down where Reed Sprague is all over it and easily bats it away. Strasburg on 4th and 2 do a quick handoff here, and Devlin barely stumbles for the first down but keeps the drive alive anyway. On the next play, there is another first down picked up by Landon Martin with his feet before a drop sets up 2nd and 10. They have a screen left, and the tackle is made by Bryson Dirks for just a gain of 4. And then with 3rd and 6 on the 38-yard line, Martin tries to squeeze into double coverage and is intercepted by Reed Sprague. So Holyoke has the ball on the 50 with 7 minutes and 40 seconds left, and they have a rollout left, and they do a little shovel to number 9 that picks up 3. Holyoke takes a timeout here with 6 minutes and 55 seconds before getting a handoff to Tyson Mossentine, who just trucks right through the defender and springs the rest of the way for a score. The PAT is no good. However, 26-0 would be a solid enough lead for the rest of this game. I mean, eventually, Strasburg does score on this next play with an incredible throw to Paul Smith to make it 26-7. But with 5 minutes and 5 seconds left to go, it is the dragon ball on the 44-yard line, and Tyson takes a handoff and frees the defender with a great cut and wins a foot race on a 44-yard touchdown run and puts Holyoke up 33-7 with 4 minutes and 5 seconds to go. There's a few blunders, a few runs, and a few drops by Strasburg here, but that would effectively end the game. And Strasburg would lose this one on the road to Holyoke 33-7. Interesting fact about last year, Holyoke actually never held the lead against Strasburg in last year's opener where Strasburg was at home. And this year, Strasburg never holds the lead against Holyoke. Plenty of scoring opportunities, but just lots of very bad mental errors by Strasburg, and then lots of playmaking by Holyoke. They seemed like they were a little bit better conditioned, if I'm being 100% honest. I feel like I noticed the Strasburg line that held really stiff against the run game early ended up kind of fading away as the game went on. That could have been a spirit thing. It could have been a cardio thing. But either way, those last 2 Tyson Mossentine touchdown runs were definitely gut punches that, make this from a 20-7 game to a 33-7 game and makes it look a little bit more out of control than maybe it really was. But, I mean, Strasburg, they came out strong and just couldn't finish drives or capitalize off of mistakes that Holyoke made. But Holyoke was capitalizing off of opportunities that Strasburg provided. And they just had playmakers on all levels. I mean, like I said, Colby Weber was making great interceptions. Reed Sprague was forcing turnovers with, big hits or interceptions. Bryson Dirks was doing his thing. Cash Weber was doing his thing. Wyatt Sprague played great on both sides of the ball at linebacker and at quarterback. And then Tyson Mossentine was the closer, and he's only going to get better as the year goes on. This Holyoke offensive line, they looked really impressive. I think that they pulled very, very well and did a great job of opening up on power, especially your counter plays. And, I'd say Strasburg, they definitely struggled to establish their will in the run game, and I think that is a huge aspect of what cost Strasburg this game and multiple spots in our power rankings, which will come later. But that will do it for my recap of the Strasburg and Holyoke football game before I talk about the rest of 1A through Week 0 and Week 1. Now, for the Week 0 recap of 1A, it was predominantly Western Slope and South Central teams that kicked off their season this week. Not a lot of competition was to be had in the following games anyway. Gunnison beat the brakes off of Del Norte 49-0. North Fork Roots Ignacio 49-6. The Moreno brothers combined for over half of North Fork's points. Hayden runs for 2, returns a punt, and has a 280-yard performance between rushing, passing, and returning. Buena Vista beats 2A Coleridge 41-0. The Demons run for 423 yards, and Caleb Camp scores 4 times, making for Playmaker of the Week candidacy. But, teammate Eli Schuknecht had a nice 190-yard rushing effort and, looks to be integral for this squad heading forward. And then Elijah Flowers, not to be left out, forced 2 sacks and led the Demons with 8 total tackles. The defense, all in all, forced 3 turnovers, and the 2026 class appears to be very strong in their early contributions. So that is the Week 0 recap. Now let me talk about what happened in Week 1. A lot more to talk about here, a lot more games to play. Now, Manual, they're one of those teams that are just outside of our top 10. They take care of business against Jefferson, 38-0. Cartel Dickey, one of our watch list guys, 7 of 16, 200 yards, 3 scores, and no interceptions at the quarterback position. So taking it pretty easy, coasting to a nice, easy win here for Manual. Monte Vista, 50 burgers, Rocky Ford. I don't really need to say anything about that. Ray handles Highland, 46-6. Quality win for the state runner-up from last year. Banning Lewis Academy opens up with a big win over Denver Christian, 56-12. And some of the familiar names from Banning Lewis Academy, Chase Real and Ben Early, conduct their business, combining for 4 scores. CSCS, Colorado Springs Christian, clobbers Flatirons Academy on the back of 6 forced turnovers by this defense. They are looking to pick up some of the slack left by some of the graduates from last year. Gunnison beat 2A Aspen 35-20 in a nice show here. And then Centauri, as far as 1A news go, loses a surprising game to Pagosa Springs 16-20 after allegedly our source let us know that the Pirates defense stiffened up down the stretch and Centauri just could not get anything going. I believe that, it sounds like this team is just not super balanced. So I fear for who is under center as Centauri heads forward. Meeker, on the other hand, got to face off against another top 10 power-ranked team in North Fork here. And this game went to overtime, and it was absurd, where Meeker pulled this game out 36-35 with a gutsy 2-point conversion attempt where they were successful, and that ended the game. This is not to take away from Hayden Moreno's Herculean 176 yards and 3 scores, and then Daniel Owens as well, who had the other 2 touchdowns for North Fork. But junior tailback Clay Crawford came to play, running for 158 yards and 2 scores, and then Ryan Sullivan appeared to be a huge difference in this game under center, throwing for 77 yards and a score on 64% completion, and also tossing the game-winning 2-point conversion to Jake Blazin. Not to be outmatched, Wyatt Powers had 2 interceptions, and Judd Harvey went insane, collecting a team-high 13 tackles. Plenty of playmakers on all levels for Meeker, who barely escapes from Week 1 with a win here. In other 1A news, Middle Park bludgeoned Pinnacle 45-0. Cedar Ridge pitched a shutout and beat Peyton 21-0. Wiggins beat 2A Brush 20-18 in double overtime, converting on their 2-point attempt and not allowing Brush to convert and getting the win here. They opened up with a 2-point conversion, which is gutsy enough. They were successful, and then to hold Brush out of that attempt is huge news for this Wiggins team that is really going to have to battle in a lot of their games this year. Estes Park, 1A Estes Park, loses to Wellington with 0 run game present. I want to say that they were literally under 3 yards per carry in the run. And then the Wellington secondary did a good job holding Estes Park's offense to just 1 scoring touchdown, PAT, 2-point conversion, whatever you have. No good. More on the Wellington side of things later. Same with this La Junta shutout of Burlington. But in some bigger news here, Buena Vista starts off 2-0 and will make an appearance on our power rankings. Be sure to stay tuned for that segment later in this episode on the heels of another defensive shutout headlined by a Caleb Camp interception and 3 fumble recoveries, including one from Nolan Verrier, who led the team in TFLs at 2. Amon Wingo also had 2 sacks in this shutout. And then sophomore Eli Schucknecht, once again, is the real deal with another 100-plus yard game and scoring all 3 of the Demons' touchdowns in their win over Salida. It's still a little concerning to see Hudson Wingo struggle this much against this level of opponent, so he will have to develop against better teams, but the defense, Eli and Caleb, are enough to win games for now. Now, shout out Trinidad. They did lose to Lamar, but man, they put in stats, which we love to see. Isaiah Romero found pay dirt for Trinidad, and fellow freshman Troy Vigil got an interception, but that was in a losing effort. And then Ellicott lost to Grand Valley 26-52. And that is the recap for 1A football through weeks 0 and 1. Be sure to stay tuned for the power rankings on 1A later this episode.
All right, everybody, time for our second game recap. We have Timnath versus Berthoud. Berthoud, after this game, I have them ranked 5th, I believe, in 2A. This is an interesting one, because Berthoud, they just came out the gate swinging, so we'll get into that. So Timnath, they ended up starting the game on offense, where Vince Hochhalter ran for 3. After a couple of incompletions from freshman quarterback Jackson Craig, the Cubs were forced to punt, where it went over Alex Kolczak's head, which resulted in a safety on the first possession, leaving the Cubs down 0-2. Kolczak's kickoff, after this happened, went 57 yards, and then A.J. Schwakowski got a tackle. Cade Geist got a tackle for loss and ultimately helped to force a punt and a timeout with 9:35 left in the first quarter. After a fumble, which was recovered by Jack DiBenedetto. You see, I got that right, Jack. I think I got that right. There was an incompletion. This ended up in a punt, which was brought back a few yards by a targeting call on Timnath. Following this, Ivan Hochhalter got a tackle, and then Vince did the same 4 times in a row, on one of which he was aided by Dominic Giron. Unfortunately, they then allowed a 32-yard touchdown, which put them down 0-9 with 4:45 left in the first. Jace Yingst then ran for 3, and after a false start, Craig threw to Jackson Barker, the freshman tight end wide receiver, for 6. After a holding call, Kolczak punted for 45 yards, and then on D, Vince Hochhalter got a tackle again. Then Giron and Evan Vaza shared one of their own. Tanner Mock got a tackle, and then Vaza got one to close out the first quarter. To start the second, Ivan Hochhalter got a tackle, and then Vince Hochhalter forced a fumble. I did not see who recovered that, but it was someone from Timnath. Yingst ran for 8 yards, but was then tackled for loss on the next carry. Barker caught for a first down, but the Cubs were back on D after a fumble. Ivan Hochhalter got a tackle, but then the Cubs allowed a long touchdown. After a chaotic kickoff sequence followed by an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, Craig threw to Carter Gaines for 10 yards. Yingst ran for 3, but this drive ended in yet another punt. After the punt was saved from bouncing back by Drew Raymond, Kyler Giron got a tackle. After Vince Hochhalter got a tackle of his own, Timnath was hit with 2 personal fouls before Vince Hochhalter got 2 more tackles. Cade Geist got a tackle in as well, but Timnath let in another touchdown to go down 22-0. Now, you might be doing the math. Timnath did block the PAT there. After a couple of runs for loss, a sack, and a timeout with 2:34 left in the half, Timnath punted once again. Once Timnath got the ball back, Davis Payne recovered a punt for 25 yards before Vince ran for another 3. After yet another personal foul, Timnath had to punt again, which went 45 yards. Giron got another tackle, and Alexander Wood got a hurry before allowing a 40-yard pass. And after a timeout, they then allowed a last-second touchdown, which put the Cubs down 29-0 heading into halftime. I mean, ultimately, I still thought it was winnable heading into this point, but then once that last-second touchdown got scored, I was like, okay, at this point, just try to keep it so that your RPI stays at a semi-reasonable level at this point. And honestly, heading into the third quarter, it's kind of stopping the bleeding. Which, I mean, Alex Kolczak, he did a pretty good job with the 60-yard kickoff. And he actually got the tackle to start off the third quarter. Vince Hochhalter got a tackle, and then Drew Seufer got a pass deflection. After a timeout with 9:38 in the third, Timnath allowed another touchdown to go down 0-36. Payne had another 25-ish yard return, and then Yingst ran for 5. After a tackle for loss and a penalty, the Cubs found themselves on 2nd and 25, but a 20-yard pass to Barker made it feel pretty salvageable. However, this was called back due to blocking in the backfield. which had a 2nd and 30 situation. The following punt was blocked, which resulted in a touchdown, which was the last score of the game, putting Timnath down 43-0. After this point, honestly, the most notable things are a 45-yard punt from Kolczak, tackles from Jack Nackstedt, RJ Thompson, Max Kolczak, and a tackle by Tanner Mock. The Cubs eventually did get in field goal position in the fourth, but from what I could see, it was blocked. It did go wide left, and that's honestly just about all that she wrote. So, looking at the playmakers of the game, first we have our defensive playmaker of the game, Cade Geist. Geist was Timnath's sole All-State selection last year, and it's obvious why he earned that honor. I do think that Vince Hochhalter should have been as well, but I think that he was held back due to getting injured towards the tail end of last season. The 6'1 sophomore was dominant on both sides of the line the whole game, and though he may not have had as many tackles as you might think just by looking at the eventual box score, his presence, it's very much like Chaz Barnett, his presence and force drew attention away from other guys like Vince, like Ivan, and it opened those holes for those guys to get those tackles and those pressure. In terms of offensive playmaker of the game, we have Jackson Barker playing in his first ever varsity game. The freshman did a hell of a job. The tight end had 45 yards on 5 receptions and was very excited about the future of this team. Barker here with comment.
Mm-hmm. But when you're looking at a night where where you're struggling a little bit on offense, what are you going to be doing moving forward to make sure that you're getting the things to run as smoothly as possible?
I think the biggest thing for us is coming back strong in practice, keeping a short mindset, and just keep working. That we're a really young team, and we're going to come back. We'll be there.
All right. And how are you feeling heading into next week's matchup?
I'm feeling good. I like how we match up against Academy, and it'll be fun. Yeah, it'll be fun to watch.
All right. When it comes to developing chemistry with your quarterback, he's a freshman too, right?
Right, yeah.
So when it comes to developing that chemistry, have you guys been playing together already? Or?
We have. Okay. We played a couple years in middle school, and I think we have a good chemistry. Yeah.
All right. How do you think that, because, with such a young team, you have a lot of freshmen and sophomores.
Right.
How do you think the freshmen did in tonight's debut against what's probably going to be a playoff team?
I think that they came out a little bit hesitant, but that's always first jitters, got to get them out. And I think they came out well, though. I think we're going to surprise some people.
So Barker, very, very optimistic. I think that's the right mindset to have. You got a young team, and you're pushing forward, and a lot of people are going to be doubting you. So having that mindset, being able to, you can beat anyone, I feel pretty good about a team where one of your main pieces has that killer mindset. So moving on to playmaker of the game, I kind of have a co-playmaker of the game between Vince Hochhalter and Alex Kolczak. Sorry, Alex, I went back and re-listened to our interview, and I realized I'd been saying it wrong the whole episode, so I'm sorry about that. But Vince, he continues to be a beast. By my count, he had 12 tackles that I wrote down. They don't have the defensive stuff in the box score yet, but he also had a forced fumble, which was by far the best that anyone did on the squad that night, numbers-wise at least. And this was an all-around solid performance for the junior. And hopefully a sign of things to come, especially since his younger brother Ivan is now on the team and got at least 4 tackles of his own. And kind of a hot take here, but I mean, I know Timnath is a new school, but Vince is the type of guy where I could see him contributing at a high level on a D2 roster. So if someone from Chadron State in particular, I feel like Chadron State, Black Hills State, New Mexico Highlands, if you're listening, come out and give this kid a look, because he is really, really solid, and I feel like he could give you a lot of stuff. In any case, here we have Vince with a comment on the game.
may not have been the result that you wanted, but it felt like you were on every other tackle tonight. So when you're looking at a team like this where you got a bunch of really strong runners and an experienced quarterback, what were you looking for when it comes to surveying the field to get to your spot?
It's just looking at how they line up and getting to the right spots quick is very important.
All right. And so what are you going to be looking at next week?
Next week I'm looking for more compassion from my team. I want to see some heart and be physical next game.
And all around for the season, how are you feeling for the outlook?
I think we'll look better than we did last year.
Thank you very much, Vince. It is always a pleasure to discuss these games with you. And now we have our other playmaker of the game, Alex Kolchak. Kolchak earned this honor for a similar reason to Colton Mills Younger. Kolchak dominated on special teams, and although he did miss a field goal, he still had his kickoffs and his punts go incredibly far, and that provided Timnath with a whole bunch of room defensively that they would not have had otherwise. Without his work, this game may have ended up much, much worse. Here's Kolchak with comment.
You had both a good and a bad night. Good on a personal stance where you got a lot of film, but you don't want your punter getting too much time. But when it comes to really developing your leg and making sure that you're able to sway the opposing offense as far as possible, what does your pregame ritual look like?
Well, I got my warm-up, and then I basically just do field goals and then do some punts with my long snapper.
All right. And when you're looking at a game like this against what's probably going to be a playoff team, what is your mindset when it comes to getting the team as a whole into the right frame of mind?
I was trying to keep everyone as positive as possible and just do what I have to do. Yeah, make sure people are doing what they have to do.
And saw that you're rated as a 4-star by Coles now. So is that getting you any looks, or or are you still reaching out to schools right now?
Not yet. I'm still reaching out to some schools though.
Cool. When you're looking at the adjustments that the team as a whole have made, how do you feel that's going to work heading into next week's matchup?
Well, I think that just the team is going to support each other, and those changes will work out pretty well. Yeah, it just takes a little bit of time, and we'll get it all done.
Thank you very much, Alex. It's always a pleasure to have a conversation with you. And so now we're going to move over to Berthoud's side of the game. So in the first quarter, Berthoud elected to defer after winning the coin toss. Ben Schroeder got a touchback on the kickoff, and Ben Larson got a tackle. Jaden Michaelis got a pass deflection before the Spartans scored a safety, going up 2-0 early in the first quarter. Cade Anderson returned the ensuing kickoff for 23, and then Alex Larson ran for 4. There was a fumble that was recovered by Joey Finnegan, and this did culminate in Darren Davidson punting, along with a timeout with 9:35 left in the first. Finnegan got a tackle, and then Donovan Mann did the same to help force a punt. After a targeting call, Alex Larson ran for 4, and then Finnegan played copycat, but threw 5 broken tackles, running for 4 of his own. Davidson pulled a QB keep for a first down, and then Alex Larson ran for 4 more. Cole Bielek ran for 3, and then Alex Larson broke free for a 32-yard touchdown. Schroeder's PAT did end up being good on that, putting Berthoud up 9-0. Schroeder's kickoff was once again a touchback, and then he got a tackle. Michaelis got 2 tackles, which helped to force another punt. Alex Larson ran for 2, and then Finnegan ran for 15. After an illegal procedure penalty, Finnegan got in a 22-yard to end the first quarter. To start the second, Alex Larson ran for 15, and then there was a fumble that was recovered by Garrett Pawlowski. Davidson ran for 6, and then there was another fumble, resulting in a turnover. Finnegan got a tackle for loss, and then Sean Barajas got one of his own. Davidson got a tackle, and then Mann recovered a fumble. Bialik ran on the first down of this possession for 1, and then Alex Larson punched in another touchdown, putting Berthoud up 16-0. On the kickoff return, Berthoud committed a face mask penalty, but Jace Newbill then got a tackle on the following down. Daniel Mahoney also got one, followed by Finnegan and Pulowski. Once back on offense, Alex Larson ran for 30, and then Finnegan ran for 5. Ethan Hoffmeister carried for 4 yards and then 2 more. Alex Larson then ran yet another score in, and Schroeder put another kick through the uprights, putting Berthoud up 22-0. Whew! The kickoff was a touchback again, and then Sam Smith got a tackle, followed by Elisha Mosher deflecting a pass. Barajas sacked the quarterback, forcing a timeout with 2:34 to go in the half. After getting the ball back, there were a few incomplete passes leading to a nothing possession, which did culminate in a 40-yard punt. Pulowski and Mosher shared 2 tackles in a row, split by a timeout. Aiden McGrath then got a pass deflection to force a switch of roles by the 2 teams. Davidson passed to Michaelis for 12, but then, after a bunch of penalties, Berthoud just avoided turning over the ball with a touchdown pass to Weston Petrowski, which, in combination with a good PAT, after a conversion that was called back due to holding, made Berthoud's lead 29-0. Schroeder then got a tackle on the return to close out the first half. Newbill opened the second half with a 70-yard return on the kickoff, which was followed by Alex Larson running for 5 yards in 2 carries. Finnegan ran for 6, and after forcing a timeout with 9:38 left in the third, Alex Larson put in a 20-yard touchdown to make it 36-0. Schroeder and Mosher did share a tackle, and then McGrath pushed out a runner. Finnegan had a tackle for loss, and then Pulowski recovered a snap that had gone over the punter's head for a touchdown. Schroeder hit the PAT, which put Berthoud up 43-0 with 6 minutes 40 seconds left in the third. Mahoney and Uriah Chacon shared a tackle. Number 81, who's not listed on the roster, got a tackle. And that's honestly most of what happened for the rest of the game. The rest of it was Timnath fighting for a point, and Berthoud's defense not letting the Cubs have it. There was a deflection or a block, I believe, on that field goal attempt in the fourth quarter, but honestly, I did not see who that was, and I'm starting to come down with a cold, so I was really feeling it at that point. But the leader of that defense, which held Timnath 2-0, was our defensive playmaker of the game, Joey Finnegan. Joey Finnegan went crazy on that night. He had 51 rush yards, but on defense he had 8 tackles, 2 of which were for loss, and a couple of hurries. It really feels like Joey Finnegan might be an early candidate for Defensive Playmaker of the Year in the 2A classification. But before we go any further, let's hear what Finnegan has to say about tonight's performance.
All right, so defensively, you had yourself a little masterclass tonight. And so I'm wondering, when you're looking at a team like this, who does have a couple of bigger guys up front, what are you looking at in the O-line when you're getting every single tackle, it felt like?
I take a couple of plays to find their weaknesses, and then I just knock them down, and then I go for that quarterback.
And obviously, they have a new quarterback, different guy than last year. So when you saw those first couple of passes, those first couple of run plays, what angle were you trying to take on those pass plays?
I was just trying to get the fastest pursuit. First foot forward, lead with the back foot, and he was throwing it fast, so I was just trying to get there as fast as I could.
All right. You probably don't know this, but Valley, they're down 39-2 right now. And so heading into a team that has a bunch of other big guys and then a really skilled quarterback in Carson Adolph, what's going to be your personal mentality heading into next week?
Sack that quarterback.
Finnegan very concisely summing up his approach to the game, sack that quarterback. Then we're going to move over to our offensive playmaker of the game, Darren Davidson, who is back in Berthoud. After a year in Wyoming where he won the 4A state championship, Davidson returned to Berthoud, ready to bring glory to his hometown, and he started the season doing just that, stretching his personal win streak from 12 to 13. Ultimately, he went 4 for 10 on 71 yards and a touchdown, which is a pretty solid homecoming. And that air game really helped open it up for our playmaker of the game for Berthoud High School, the Spartans, Alex freaking Larson. This fella tore up the turf. He had 135 rush yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. He carried the Spartan squad on his back offensively. And this was just a great game for the senior, and he felt pretty good about himself.
So by my count, you had 4 touchdowns tonight, which is pretty damn insane. And so when you're looking at the best way to start a season where you guys are really looking to contend, how do you feel about how that?
I feel like it went pretty good. We definitely have a lot of stuff to work on. Our defense played great. Our offense still lacking a little, but still produced. But we got to get it up.
Do you think with another week, with a little bit more consistency under center, you guys will feel a lot better heading into the matchup next week?
Yeah, definitely. It's just experience. It's just an experience thing.
All right. And what are you going to be looking for in the Valley defense? Because this is a team that you're going against pretty consistently. So.
I'm not sure just yet. This week's going to be a lot of film studying just as an overall team. See what they run.
Well, there you go. That's Alex Larson out of Berthoud. Best of luck with the rest of your senior year. Thank you very much for the quick interview. And so all in all, this was a very interesting game. Timnath, they showed a lot of flashes. And I'm sure that once they're healthy again, they will be in much better shape. Berthoud, they're a team that I have ranked at 5 in 2A right now. So it's an understandable loss. On top of that, they were without their RB2 in Mitchell Dean Gellis, which certainly did not help. They made the... I didn't have a conversation about this in particular, but they made the adjustment early in the game to make sure that Vince Hochhalter had the energy to give us all on defense, which did end up working a little bit. And so they switched it over a little bit to Yingst. Now, once Dean Gellis is back, I do see them winning a couple of games. And, I mean, next week is going to be tough, but the Academy they did lose a lot compared to last year. So we'll see how they do in that matchup. Berthoud, on the other hand, did show why they are a borderline contender. They have a really strong defense led by Finnegan and a solid offensive scheme. Having Joey Finnegan and Alex Larson really helps them, but the return of Darren Davidson poses some interesting questions. Because you do have Styler Stryker, who's going to win that quarterback battle. I was talking with the fella from the Berthoud newspaper. I'm forgetting the name of the paper right now. Will, it was, though. And he was talking about how that quarterback battle was still going until a couple of days ago. And so you have to ask yourself, what is that position going to look like for the Spartans? It's tough, but they do have another week to figure it out, and we'll see how they do against the Valley Vikings next Friday. Timnath will be back home next week as well, facing the Wildcats of the Academy. Best of luck to both teams for the rest of the season, and I will see y'all in the Saturday games portion of this episode. Peace.
And that was Gideon with the Berthoud versus Timnath recap. Did something a little different there, getting some of those players' clips in there. If that is something that you did enjoy, be sure to comment on the social media posts or interact with this part of the podcast so that we know that is something that we should continue to do. But now we're going to pass the mic over to Gino, who's going to give us a 2A recap.
What's going on, y'all? My name is Gino Vigil, and I will be recapping the 2A football games for weeks 1 and 0.
There were a lot of great games in the first 2 weeks in 2A, and we're going to get to all of them. But let's go ahead and start out with week 0, where we had 2 cross-class games and 1 game between 2 2A teams. Let's go ahead and start out with our first game of week 0. We had the number 9 in our power rankings, Basalt, shut out Summit 28-0. On offense for Basalt, you had Noah Johnston going 6 for 9 for 82 yards with 2 touchdowns through the air and another one on the ground. Sophomore running back Will Terreo going 19 carries for 127 yards. And then Taylor Hayes on offense had 2 receiving touchdowns and an interception on defense. Also on defense, you had Gage Balderson putting up 2 sacks and 9 total tackles. Unfortunately, we did not get any stats for Summit for week 0. In our next week 0 matchup, we had 2A Aspen falling to 3A Glenwood Springs by a score of 36-28. Unfortunately, we didn't get any stats for Aspen for week 0. In our last week 0 matchup, we had Coleridge falling to 1A Buena Vista by a score of 41-0. It was a very shaky game from Coleridge on both sides, with only 178 yards of total offense and no touchdowns to show for it. Now let's move on to week 1, where we had a lot of great games and stats for most of them. Our first game in week 1 for 2A consisted of the number 4 in our power rankings, Elizabeth, defeating Devlin 48-12. Elizabeth dominated on the ground with 310 rushing yards as a team, and they passed the ball well when they needed to, with Gavin Garcia going 7 for 8 for 94 yards. Cooper Connolly, however, was the big story, which he led the way on both sides with 188 yards on the ground, with 4 rushing touchdowns and a pick 6 on defense. Cash Randall also added 3 tackles for loss to go along with 2 sacks. And for Devlin, Russell Balser had a punt return touchdown. Starting off the Friday games for week 1 in 2A, we had Aspen falling to 1A Gunnison 35-20. There were no stats posted for Aspen for this game. Next we had Summit shutting out Woodland Park 21-0. There were no stats posted for this game either. After that, we had a huge game between the number 1 in our power rankings, Delta, defeating the number 4 in our power rankings, University, by a score of 28-14. Delta had no Asai Carrillo, but that was no problem, with Giovanni Romero stepping up for 114 yards rushing, and Delta was able to beat a very tough University squad with a balanced offensive attack. 3 different receivers for Delta had a touchdown, and Delta on defense did very well against the run, and they fared well against the pass as well, with Xavier Martinez clocking 9 tackles and a sack. For University, we had Will Corby with 5 receptions for 121 yards. Next, we have a cross-class matchup between 1A Yuma taking down 2A Sterling by a score of 22-8. Unfortunately, there were no stats posted for Sterling for this game. After that, we have another cross-class matchup with 1A Buena Vista shutting out 2A Salida by a score of 22-0. That is Buena Vista's second 2A team that they have shut out this year, and there weren't any stats posted for Salida for this game, unfortunately. In our next 2A Week 1 game, we have Wellington defeating Estes Park in a close game, 8-6. Sophomore QB Tanner Gray for Wellington goes 144 yards on the ground with a touchdown. And then Wellington as a team added 340 total rush yards, all from sophomores, so they have a very young offense. They had 2 picks and 2 sacks on the other side. And then Azuya Gracie with 19 tackles and 3 QB hurries in a game where they only allowed 6 points. Big game for him. And then there were no stats posted for Estes Park yet. In our next game in 2A, we had an offensive explosion for Manitou Springs as they dominate Valley by a score of 39-2. Manitou passed the ball very well with 3 different receivers getting a touchdown, and QB Nate Gensel goes 14 for 22 for 185 yards and 4 touchdowns. They also ran the ball well with Logan Moore going 12 carries for 124 yards and a touchdown. And then on defense, they had 3 turnovers, and Braden Downing and Donovan Ornelas both with 2 sacks. Next up, we have Weld Central defeating Bennett by a score of 51-28. For Bennett, they ran the ball 59 times, with 45 of those going to the Cronk brothers, Tristan and Cougar. They also went 0-6 for passing, which isn't uncommon for them. They're going to be running the ball most of the time, but if they want to be a real threat, I think they need to seriously start to develop a pass game. And then on defense, they had Brody Hawes with 19 tackles and a forced fumble. There weren't any stats posted for Weld Central for this game. And then we have Lamar taking on Trinidad, winning by a score of 44-8. For Lamar, you had Cale Buxton with 2 receptions and 2 touchdowns for 87 yards. Lamar had 10 different players that had a carry, and Lamar only allowed 45 yards of total offense.
Next up, we have an out-of-state matchup between Colorado's very own Montezuma Cortez as they fall to New Mexico's 4A school Aztec by a score of 28-6. There weren't any stats posted for Cortez this game. Next up, we have another cross-class matchup with 3A Resurrection Christian taking down 2A Moffat County by a score of 14-0. For Moffat County, you had Ian Champ Hayfie with 7 tackles and 2 tackles for loss. In another cross-class matchup, we had 3A Pueblo Central take down Alamosa by a score of 40-12. For Alamosa, you had junior QB Dyson Woodward go 7 for 15, 146 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was against a tough 3A opponent, so it'll be interesting to see what they do against other 2A teams. After that, we had the number 4 in our power rankings, Berthoud, start their year off strong with a blowout against Timnath, 43-0. Berthoud dominated Timnath's run game, only allowing 19 yards on 15 carries. Berthoud's defense also had 3 fumble recoveries, 4 tackles for loss, and a block punt. On offense, you had Alex Larson with 135 yards on 16 carries and 4 touchdowns on the ground. Next up, we have another big win for Basalt as they defeat Eagle Valley by a score of 49-16. Noah Johnston had another efficient game with 3 passing touchdowns on 4 completions. Sophomore running back Will Torreo followed up his 120-yard performance in Week 0 with 11 carries and 71 yards and a touchdown this week. Taylor Hayes had another balanced week with a receiving touchdown and a pick 6 on defense, and Basalt's defense had 5 turnovers in total. There weren't any stats posted for Eagle Valley as of the recording of this video. Next up, we have Bayfield losing in an out-of-state matchup to San Juan, which is a 2A out of Utah, by a score of 61-0. There weren't any stats posted for Bayfield for this game. Next up, we have a tight matchup between Steamboat Springs and Coal Ridge, with Steamboat Springs coming out on top 21-14. On offense for Steamboat, Thomas Krupp led the way with 174 yards rushing and 55 yards receiving, with 1 rushing touchdown and 2 receiving touchdowns. On defense, Waylon Lott led the way with 12 tackles and a sack. And then for Coal Ridge on defense, Grayson Eisenhart had 18 tackles and half a sack. And then Dylan Miller added 2 picks as well. In the next game, we have Wiggins beating Brush in a double OT thriller by a score of 20-18. Unfortunately, there weren't any stats posted for this game. And then we have Kent Denver defeating Platte Valley by a score of 14-0. There weren't any stats posted for this one either. Next up, we have the number 10 in our 2A power rankings, Florence, falling to the number 1 in our 1A power rankings, Lyman, by a score of 55-23. For Florence, sorry if I messed this up, Lugas Nuss got 5 carries, 102 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the ground. In our next 2A matchup, we have La Junta dominating Burlington by a score of 42-0. There weren't any stats posted for this game. In our last Friday night game of Week 1, we have Pagosa Springs defeating 1A Centauri by a score of 20-16. There weren't any stats posted for Pagosa for this game. In our first Saturday game for 2A Week 1, we have Arvada dominating Prospect Ridge by a score of 54-6. Now, before I get into the offensive stats for Arvada, I just want to highlight that they only allowed 24 yards on 29 carries. But on offense, you have Trevor Lucero, who exploded for 340 yards passing and 7 touchdowns through the air. And then sophomore receiver Jariah Ariano got 6 catches for 183 yards and 5 touchdowns. Just ridiculous. And then Gabriel Munguia, sorry if I mispronounced that, also had 14 carries, 121 yards, and a rushing touchdown, plus 7 tackles and a tackle for loss on defense. Also, you had Christian Lake with 4 catches, 73 yards, and 2 touchdowns on offense, and he had 2 sacks on defense. Just an all-around amazing game on offense and defense for Arvada. Next up in 2A, we have Fort Lupton taking down 3A Wheat Ridge by a score of 24-22. Frankie Flores for Fort Lupton kicked in the game-winning field goal with only a minute to go. Royce Guerrero was their whole offense with 145 yards through the air and 147 on the ground with 2 passing touchdowns and 1 rushing. And then Anthony Bland Mendenhall with 3 receptions, 83 yards, and 2 touchdowns for Fort Lupton. Next up, we have Grand Valley taking down Ellicott by a score of 52-26. For Grand Valley, junior QB Andrew Horner had a massive game on both sides. On offense, he had 3 rushing touchdowns and 3 passing, with 121 yards through the air and 117 yards on the ground.
On defense, he had an interception and 2 pass deflections. And then as a team, Grand Valley rushed for a total of 400 yards. There weren't any stats posted for Ellicott for this game. And last but not least, we had a huge game that happened with the reigning state champs Eaton falling to the Classical Academy by a score of 14-7. For the Classical Academy, they really relied on their run game and defense to hold down the reigning state champs in week 1. With 9 tackles for loss on defense and then a combined 45 carries and 214 yards from Andrew Brown and Riley Romine on offense, that ended up being the formula for their big win. And then on defense, they also had Andrew Borchert with 3 tackles for loss and a sack. There weren't any stats posted for Eaton for this game.
Thank you, Gino, for that 2A recap. And now I'm going to go ahead and direct this back over to a familiar voice from just a couple segments ago, Gideon, to tell us about what happened in 3A over these first 0 and first weeks of Colorado football.
Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to another episode of the Playmakers Corner podcast. I'm Gideon Agner, and today I'm going to start off by going over Thursday night's games in terms of Week 0 of the 2023 football season. That is in the 3A classification. So we're going to start things off with Basalt versus Summit. Basalt ended up winning this one 28-0. Where you see that Noah Johnston, he had 80-plus yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 6 rushing yards, and a rushing touchdown. Sophomore Will Tarallo, he had 127 rush yards and 35 receiving yards. William Daniel as well, he had 82 rush yards, 1 rushing touchdown, and 6 tackles. Then you have Taylor Hayes with 44 rush yards, 24 receiving yards, 39 interception return yards, 1 interception, 4 tackles, and a pass deflection. You have Mav Dombrowski with 10 tackles, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. All around, when I checked this game, Summit didn't really have any stats input, so that's mostly the Basalt stats. However, when we're looking at the stats from the other game that happened that night, we have Glenwood Springs, who won over Aspen 36-28. So we have Joaquin Sandoval, the quarterback out of Glenwood Springs. He went 10 for 21 on passing. He got 139 pass yards, 111 rush yards. Ended up with 250 aggregate yards. He had 2 rushing touchdowns and 10 tackles on that, with 2 forced fumbles. We also have Mason Markovich, who had 85 rushing yards, 31 receiving yards, 3 conversions, 2 tackles, a tackle for loss, a sack, an interception, a fumble recovery, 69 fumble return yards, 13 interception return yards, and an interception return touchdown. You also have Jarek Sorensen with 45 receiving yards, Joey Vacavia with 27. All around, you got a really solid night from a bunch of these Glenwood Springs guys. Shout out to Oliver Waltz. He had the other touchdown. He had 4 tackles, 1 fumble recovery for 56 yards, and the touchdown. So, all around, just really, really solid from the Glenwood Springs squad. Those were the 2 games that happened during Week 0 in 3A. So, all around, really, really good. All right, and we're back to talk about 3A Week 1 now. We have a number of games to go through. These are all stats that I was able to access by about noon on Sunday, August 27th. So, if the stats aren't in here, don't take it up with me, take it up with your coaches. So first, George Washington won over Hinckley 53-0. Now, I know that Hinckley is kind of the perpetual punching bag of 3A to 5A, but that is still an insane amount of points from a 3A squad that is losing one of the best running backs in Colorado from last year, and a wide receiver that's currently with me up here at CSU right now. Then we have Skyview winning over Thornton 13-0. You have Carlos Carrillo all around not the best performance from the Skyview quarterback. He threw an interception, only had 11 pass yards. He had 16 rush yards, though, and that ended up culminating in a touchdown. On the Thornton side of things, David Williams, who in that Wheat Ridge game last week, he ended up sealing the deal for them, but he had 131 rush yards. Shea Brown from Skyview, he had 73 rush yards. Omar Loza, 14. Vincent Lopez with 10 tackles and half a sack. And you've got Jeremy Ball with a touchdown, and then Isaiah Prince and Josiah Morris with 6 tackles, and then also Jonathan Singleton and Ruben Pareza Telemontes, with 4 tackles themselves. Then we have Holy Family versus Frederick. This is one that ended up very, very good for Holy Family. They ended up winning 27-8 over a team that most of the state had pretty highly regarded. Looking at the box score on this one, Frederick hasn't input any stats yet, but Rylan Cooney, the senior quarterback out of Holy Family, he went 12 for 19 on passing attempts for 144 yards. On the ground as well, he had 103 rushing yards for 3 touchdowns. You also have Dominic Gabriel, who had 101 rush yards. Anthony Scott with only 13 rush yards, but he had a touchdown in there as well. No receiving touchdowns, but we do have Monte Samaras with 74 receiving yards. Dominic Gabriel again in the mix with 38 receiving yards. Then we come down here and we're looking at the tackles. Well, Mark Mullendor, he had 11 tackles. Braden Bach with 9. You got 2 guys with 8. That's Connor Neely and Dominic Gabriel again. Camden Austin with 5. Josen Itten with 4. Rylan Cooney also with 4, but one of those was a tackle for loss. And then you've got Guerrero in there with 4 tackles of his own. Dutch Vandale with a tackle for loss himself. Rylan Cooney also with a sack. Vandale had a sack, and then Camden Austin also had a sack. All around, this was Holy Family putting up the best that they possibly could. Looks like they had 2 kickers in this game, which is kind of odd. Cooper Bigelow and Oliver Hansen. Let's hope they figure that out soon. And then, yeah, all around, Jackson Grable, he also had a receiving conversion as well. So pretty solid game from Holy Family to take down the Frederick Golden Eagles. Then we have Cheyenne Mountain versus Pueblo East on that Thursday night as well. You have Pueblo East actually coming out on top of the Red-Tailed Hawks 35-13, which, oof, that just hurts if you're a Red-Tailed Hawks fan. Because looking at it, Bruce Archambault, he had 305 yards and 1 touchdown. Ouch. But that also says a lot about the Pueblo East Eagles defense. So looking at it, you have Dominic Sierra, who had 236 pass yards, 3 touchdowns to 1 interception. Rushing, you have Gabriel Garcia, who had 78 rush yards. Then Dominic Sierra with 31 rush yards as well. He had 2 touchdowns. And then Paki Amaro, who had a touchdown on 11 rush yards. Receiving-wise, you have Isaiah Trujillo. He had 2 touchdowns. And then Paki Amaro also had 107 receiving yards. So you're having a lot of good production from the Pueblo East Eagles. In terms of defensive statistics, you have 3 pass deflections in this game. Damian Alir with pass deflection, Brennan Rowe with 1, and then Kenny Madrid. A lot of good returns. Paki Amaro with 34 kick return yards, and Isaiah Trujillo with 38. Paki, he also had 68 punt return yards on 2 punt returns, and then Trujillo, he had 20 yards on punt returns. So all around, a really solid game from Pueblo East. You also have a freshman kicker in Dylan Cooper from Pueblo East. I'm going to be keeping an eye on him, but he went 5 for 5 on PATs. So that's going to be a guy to keep an eye on. You can always use a trustworthy special teams. That's why the 2014 Chargers didn't make the playoffs. So ultimately, I feel pretty solid about this for Pueblo East. And that's all the 3A games, all 4 of them, that is, that happened on Thursday the 24th. So I'll pass it back on to whoever we got next. See you in a minute. Peace. Hello, everybody, and now we are on to the Friday games here in 3A. We have a grand total of 22 games to look at, so let's try to make it quick here. So first, we have Pueblo County versus Pueblo South. Pueblo County ended up coming on top 35-14 in this one. Cohen Glenn from County had 176 pass yards on 9 completions, 14 attempts. He also had 4 touchdowns and a QBR of 147.3. Caden Herrera of Pueblo South, the sophomore, he was 15 of 27 passing with 152 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Rushing, looking at both teams, you've got Jonathan Gonzalez out of Pueblo County with 82 rush yards and a touchdown, and Joseph Wolf from South with 37 rush yards and a touchdown. Also from South, it looks like you have Ricky Dean Martinez, who had 37 yards as well. You got Blake Parker, from the sophomore out of Pueblo County, with 46 yards, and Caden Peters with 38. Receiving, Jonathan Gonzalez also had 123 yards and 2 touchdowns. Brock Roseman, 16 yards and 1 touchdown, and then Tegan Dillon with a touchdown of his own for the Hornets. Yeah, it's Hornets. Okay, good. Receiving for the Colts, you have Jake Piscata and Namone Robinson, as the main targets. Both of them sophomores. So this is a very young Pueblo South team. You got 47 receiving yards for Piscatia and 40 for Robinson. Then we are going to go down to defense, where we see that Johnny Mooring from Pueblo County had 10 tackles, the junior. Brock Roseman, Alex Gillespie, and Terrell Dillaha, had 5, and Gonzalez, again, he had 4. Then for South, we have Ryan Lane, the senior, with 10, Chase Hurley with 9, and then after that, those were your 2 main guys, 19 of the 29 in total. Caden Peters of Pueblo County had the sole sack of the game. Dillaha had an interception for 5 yards, and Gonzalez had 2 pass deflections, while Armando Manuel from South had a pass deflection. Damian Cordova and Nicholas Lopez had fumble recoveries. Chase Hurley and Ryan Lane. Chase Hurley had 2 fumbles forced, and Ryan Lane had 1 forced fumble. Punts. We might have to add Braden Medina from Pueblo South to the puncher's watch list. In 4 punts, he had 171 yards. And Cohen Glenn, he might have to go on there too. He had 167 yards in 3 punts, so 55 yards on average on that, the longest being 73 yards. Whew. All around, solid performance from both teams, but looks like Pueblo South came out on top on that. I think looking at this, Cohen Glenn might have to go on the watch list for Playmaker of the Week. I'm going to have to speed this up. Northfield next. No stats have been posted from this game, but they took the win over Aurora Central 53-0. Then we look at Lutheran from here, going up against Lutheran, the Cougars out of Minnesota. Riken Doggard with 120 passing yards on 5 completions, so 24 yards per. On 3 of those completions, only 7 attempts, by the way, 3 of those completions led to touchdowns. Then you also have Jack Weslowski with 59 rush yards and a touchdown, Sawyer Wald with 58 and a tutty, and Cole Johnson with 41 rush yards and a touchdown. Riken Doggard also with 26 rushing yards. Receiving, Joseph Sissio with 2 receiving touchdowns, and Ben Herbeck with 1 on 23 yards. Sissio, he had 97 receiving yards. All around, really, really good game. Pretty dang solid. Sam Smolin doing what we expect him to do. hitting 3 of 4 PATs. Micah Dooley with a PAT of his own. All around solid night from the Lutheran Lions. Summit ended up taking the win over Woodland Park 21-0. No stats in for that one yet, but looking at it, that's going to be something to keep an eye on, especially when it comes to how Woodland Park is doing this season, because they actually lost pretty bad to Summit, or they beat Summit pretty bad last year. Looking at Harrison and Widefield, Harrison lost 14-35. No stats input for Harrison yet. We have Durango at Farmington. Farmington's playing a lot of the Colorado schools in that part of the state. Tyler Harms, he had a pretty good night, going 12 for 26, so not great completion percentage-wise, and he did throw an interception, but he had 171 yards and a touchdown. Dylan Burns with the -17 rushing yards. But Jackson Fancher coming out with a surprising 101 yards and a touchdown himself. Receiving, we also have Peyton Dyke with 68 receiving yards on 2 receptions, Seb Tripp with 52 receiving yards, and Loudon Grimes with 29, which was for a touchdown, a single reception there. Then tackles-wise, Mason Palmer, Brett Hamer, and Rodriguez here, Julian Rodriguez, each having 7 tackles, Julian having 1. Cully Feeney with 6 tackles, Dane Matlock with 5, that's going to be a name to keep an eye on in 3A, Ryan Duggan with 4, and Wyatt Bartell with 3. Jacob Newbert with a hurry, no sacks. Mason Palmer and Cully Feeney with an interception apiece. Jacob Newbert with 2 pass deflections. Fancher, Brett Hammer, and Mason Palmer with a pass deflection each. And Ryan Duggan with a fumble recovery. In terms of punts, Dylan Burns, 176 yards on those punts, 44 yards per. And all around pretty dang solid from the Demons. Just didn't get the win over Farmington. Then we have Grand Junction versus Glenwood Springs. Glenwood is a team that's actually shooting up pretty high in my rankings. Joaquin Sandoval, 13 for 23 with 192 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Mason Markovich with 180 yards, rushing, 3 touchdowns, and Sandoval with 104 yards, 1 touchdown, and a 44-10 win over the Grand Junction Tigers. Receiving, we were looking at Hunter Knoll, Zach Bullock, and Cale Solers. Solers is another guy to watch, but Knoll had 90 yards and a touchdown, and Bullock had 66 yards and a touchdown. Tackles-wise, we are looking at Oliver Waltz and Joaquin Sandoval having 7 apiece. Sandoval having a tackle for loss. Markovich had 5 tackles. And then you have Shai Bello and Griffin Solers with 3 tackles apiece. Fella by the name of Obrecht. Matwez Obrecht. I hope I'm saying that right. He had 2 sacks. And then Griffin Solers had an interception, and Logan Shanks had a fumble recovery. All around solid night. Sandoval and Markovich also each had conversion rushes. So Glenwood Springs is putting together a very solid season, it's looking like. Then looking at Sierra versus Littleton. Sierra won 26-18. Littleton has not entered stats, but in terms of Sierra, Stankiewicz, he had 93 yards on 6 for 11 passing and a touchdown. Then in terms of rushing, you don't really have too much. You have Malik Bean, who had 28 rushing yards. Then you have Jaquel Howard with 24 and a touchdown. And then Ryan Stankiewicz, he had -10 rushing yards. That's not great. Receiving-wise, though, Malachi Brown was the guy getting it done for. He was 62 yards. And then looking at it, you got Williams over here. That's Christian Williams. He had 6 yards on 1 reception, but that was a receiving touchdown. So Then you also have Deshaun Wilson with the saving interception at the end, sealing the deal for the Sierra Stallions in here. In terms of tackles, Malik Bean with 7, Williams also with 7. Bean had 3 tackles for loss. Chance Zamora, 5 tackles, 1 for loss. Jerome Barnes, Jaquel Howard, and Valenzuela for 4. And then Nathan Sweet with 3 tackles and a tackle for loss. Sweet, by the way, he had a hurry. And then, Deshaun Wilson, 2 interceptions, one of which was that game sealer. And then you also have Anderson in here. Alrenzo Anderson with an interception of his own. So, really good game. After I saw that Sierra was losing Michael Lumpkin, I wasn't sure how many games they'd win, so it's good to see that they are staying a bit successful there. Then we have Niwo versus Greeley Central. No stats on that yet, but Niwo winning 14-7. Pueblo Central beating Alamosa 40-12. Pueblo Central has not entered stats yet, but all around it's looking like they recovered at least 3 fumbles. So this was a solid defensive game for Pueblo Central. Palmer versus Sand Creek. Sand Creek ended up winning this one 20-12 over the Palmer Terrors. Sand Creek has entered their stats. Weirdly enough, Palmer has entered their all-purpose stats for just special teams and defense, where we see Daihwan Nunley with 19 yards, Quincy Amos with 15, Julian Horsey with 10 all-purpose yards, and then tackles for Palmer. Dyson Sharpton with 7, Aiden Puentes for 5 and a tackle for loss, Martinez with 5 and a tackle for loss, Anthony Dozman with 5, Kian Dekian with 4 and a tackle for loss. In terms of interceptions, Julian Horsey and Dyson Sharpton with an interception apiece. All around a good amount of production here. And then in terms of what we've got from Sand Creek, though, Terrence Clay, 11 for 33 passing, but 196 yards there. 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, a 49.6 QBR. Brotherns, you've got Elijah Brotherns with 92 rush yards, Jaden Lyons with 46 rush yards, and Cameron Smith with 38. Then you have receiving-wise, you've got Brotherns again with 106 receiving yards, Ethan Nielsen with 59 receiving yards, and Lyons again with 32. Then, for some reason, the only person with tackles entered is Brotherns, and then Brotherns also had a punt return for 50 yards. It doesn't have listed who scored those 2 touchdowns, or the 3 touchdowns that would have had to have been scored by Sand Creek, but Sand Creek, it looks like, had a bit of broke a stalemate there in the 4th quarter, so all around solid game it looks like. Then we have Roosevelt and Palisade. Dang. Okay, so Roosevelt, Bronco Hartson, 9 for 13 with 104 yards, 3 touchdowns to an interception. Palisade, Springer was their main guy with, he went 3 for 4 for 28 yards. Kedon Everett also tried to pass, but he went 0 for 6 with an interception. So that's not too great. Rushing, we have Caleb Johnson from Palisade with 39 rush yards and a touchdown. Kedon Everett with 28 rush yards, and Caleb Wells with 25. For the Rough Riders, Luke Vigil with 79, Xavier Ramirez with 65 rushing yards, that is. Vigil, he had 1 touchdown. Ramirez, he had 2. And then Bronco Hartson with 45 rush yards, and Jace Guntel with 16 rush yards and a touchdown. Receiving, you have Xavier Ramirez with 40 yards, Noah Lucero with 36, and Kara Bench with 18. Caden Potberg with 7 as well. Potberg, Kara Bench, and Ramirez each had a receiving touchdown. For Palisade, Easton Embry was your main receiver with 20 receiving yards. So all around pretty solid. Then looking at tackles, For the Rough Riders, this was a very, very spread out affair. Noel Sanchez, the junior, he had 6 tackles, a tackle for loss. Evan Hayes and Montanez each had 4 tackles. Montanez had 2 tackles for loss. Kason Lopez, 3 tackles. Ryder Timkowitz, Aiden Henry, and Jax Armstrong all had 3 tackles. Meanwhile, for the Palisade Bulldogs, Caleb Reed had 7. Caleb Johnson had 6. Dylan Larson had 5, along with Sam Chacon, who had 5, and then a tackle for loss. Jeremiah Woolery, he had 5 as well, and then Julian Tautua, he had 5. Mulaney, he had 4, and Johnston had 4 as well, along with Caleb Wells and Marcus Royster having 3. Noel Sanchez had a sack, and Caleb Reed did as well. Marcus Royster had an interception for the Bulldogs, and then Evan Hayes did for the Rough Riders. All-around solid game for both teams. Jacob Wahaj for the Rough Riders was averaging 54 yards on kickoffs in 7 attempts. All around pretty solid. But the freshman out of Palisade, Carter Hayward, 2 kickoffs, 116 total yards, so 58 yards average on that. That's pretty solid. We're going to be keeping an eye on you in 3A. And then PATs, yeah, perfect from both Sean Balch and Jacob Wahaj at Roosevelt. And Carter Hayward, 0 for 1. But that's pretty good distance on a kickoff. Fort Morgan versus Conifer. Conifer won 18-7. Looking at the box score here, Conifer, Wyatt Nichols, 7 for 8 on passing, 1 touchdown. You've got Wolansky with 92 rush yards, Carson Payer with 74, Grady Forsyth, the tight end, with 55 rush yards and a touchdown, and then Wyatt Nichols with 54 yards. Pearson Michael with only 6 rush yards, but he had a rushing touchdown. Then receiving, Benson White, he had 23 receiving yards and a touchdown. Forsyth, 21 receiving yards, and Jackson Kossar with 10. Then in terms of tackles, Benson White with 8, Forsyth with 7, Pearson Michael with 6, and Jack Hughes with 4. Bunch of guys with 3. Forsyth with a sack, losing 11 yards on that. Benson White with a forced fumble. All around pretty solid game from Conifer against Fort Morgan. Then we've got Green Mountain winning 36-0 over Golden. Looking at it, Green Mountain, all around pretty solid. Blake Weslin with 91 yards, 2 touchdowns. Max Cobain with 1 pass attempt, 1 completion, 16 yards, and a touchdown. Rushing, you've got 3 guys with over 50 yards, and Blake Weslin with 2 touchdowns. Noel Dacres, Poligno, and Hudson Burke, he had 27. Receiving, Max Chobon, he had 30. Poligno, he had 23 receiving yards and a touchdown. George Sopp, he had 19 and a touchdown. Blake Weslin, 16 and a touchdown. And Austin Beeston with 19. No touchdown, though. Tackles, Green Mountain has not entered anything defensively yet. So PATs, though, Brady Wilder, 3 for 4 and 1 of 1 on field goals. Discovery Canyon versus Lewis Palmer. Lewis Palmer wins 21. No, that's the rank, 41-13. Discovery Canyon, no stats, but Kenton Kenley from Lewis Palmer, 3 for 8 for 61 yards, touchdown and an interception. Rushing, Jaden Pagano, the junior from Lewis Palmer, 2 touchdowns, 171 yards. Luke DeBoer, 96 rush yards, 2 touchdowns. Kenton Kenley, 28 rush yards and a touchdown. Joe Nisley and Jaden Pagano are the 2 receivers for Lewis Palmer in this game. Pagano, 24 yards and a touchdown. Nisley, 37 yards total. Then we have Jared Moore. He had an interception for it's looking like 15 yards here. Yeah, all around pretty solid game for Lewis Palmer. Sorry, my ass got caught by the kickoffs. I'm sure that's a typo. Probably meant to say 260 yards, but it says 26 on 7 kickoffs, so that can't be right. That had me really confused there for a moment. yeah, solid game against what was a playoff squad last year. Then we have Meade losing to Windsor 7-10. Honestly, not too surprised. Windsor is one of the best defenses in the state. Christian Heiner and Meade, 15 for 26, 161 yards, 1 touchdown to 2 interceptions, unfortunately. Rushing, only 3 guys had positive yards on the 5 that carried, and of them, none had over 20 yards. Ryan St. Aubin had 15 yards. Cole Michaelis, he had 15, and then Edison Burke had 9 rush yards. A lot of receiving, though. You had 6 guys over 20 yards. Edison Burke with 37 yards, that 1 touchdown. Ty Olson with 29. Angel Johnson and Ethan Scallon with 22 apiece. Ryan St. Aubin with 20, and Stevenson with 20. In terms of tackles, Kratoshville, with 9 total tackles, a tackle for loss. Cale Hansen and J.D. Hamilton with 7 apiece. Cody McDonald and Spendlove with 6. So Josh Gonsalves with 5. Hagan Williams and Bryce Melachar with 4. Melachar had 2 tackles for loss, and then Caleb Elmore with 3 tackles and a tackle for loss. Spendlove with a sack. Kratishville with 2 pass deflections, and Cody McDonald with 1. So all around pretty dang solid there from Meade. Unfortunately, they did lose. Going to skip around here a little bit. Kennedy lost to Mesa Ridge 57-0. I'm not going to go in on that one. Pueblo Centennial lost to Denver North 41-0. Not going to go in on that one either. That's just depressing. Then we're going to go Eagle Valley versus Basalt. Eagle Valley has not entered stats yet, but they did lose 15-49. Then we have Res Christian beating Moffat County 14-0. Jackson Zanka from Res Christian, the sophomore, 8 for 12 for 85 yards and a touchdown. Rushing-wise, Hunter Hansen with 91 yards, Grant Appleby with 65, Zanka with 55. Receiving, you've got Sam Johnson with 55, and then Grant Appleby, 25 yards and a touchdown. In terms of defense, your main guy was Seamer, 9 tackles there. Then you got Will Reeves with 6, Christian Seamer, that is. And then Grant Appleby with 4 and a tackle for loss. Skeet Malone with 2 tackles and a tackle for loss. And then Zach Coet with 3 tackles. Skeet Malone with an interception. And then Will Reeves with a forced fumble, and Sam Johnson with a fumble recovery for 3 yards. All around pretty solid from Res Christian over an experienced Moffat County team. Then we have one that we got a lot of DMs about in Mountain View and Riverdale Ridge. Yes, we know that we predicted you to go 1-9, Riverdale Ridge. You ended up winning against Mountain View 39-7. Riverdale Ridge, Mountain View hasn't entered stats, but Riverdale Ridge, Isaiah Medina, 15 for 21 for 158 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Diego Galvin, the sophomore, with 132 yards and a touchdown. Amari Lucero, the junior, 81 yards and a touchdown, and Isaiah Medina, 25 yards and the touchdown. Receiving, Jay Otanez, 63 yards and a touchdown. Marcus McFadden, 56 and a touchdown. And then Jeter MacArthur, 18 yards. Abby Samuel, 12 yards. In terms of, and that's all they have. They only have offensive stats. So good job proving us wrong, guys. Finally, though, we're going over to game of the night here, in my opinion. Severance versus Canyon City. Severance was down 22 points in the second half from what I've heard. Canyon City has not entered stats yet, but we're going to go off of Severance for what I think could be 2 Playmaker of the Week candidates. So, passing, Jaden Hoffman, 17 for 27 for 254 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Rushing, you have Jaden Hoffman with 41 rush yards, Ian Pennick with 33, and Jeremiah Hoffman with 29. Receiving, This is going to blow your socks off. Jeremiah Hoffman, 167 receiving yards with 1 touchdown. Brady Varney with 43 and 2 touchdowns. Ian Pennick with 35 and 1 touchdown. In terms of tackles, Kelson Gazdick, 13 tackles, 1 for loss. Anik Henderson, 12, none for loss. Mason Campbell, 11 with 2 for loss. Cisneros, 10. Reed Green, 9. Alex Vaughn, Brady Varney, Gabriel Hogan, all 6. Caden Glover and Ryan Myers for 5. Ethan Shears for 4. A lot of guys on here. 2 pass deflections from Reed Green and 2 forced fumbles, and then Brett Varney with a pass deflection of his own. Alex Vaughn for 3 of 3 from PATs. And then let's take a look at the special teams. Jeremiah Hoffman with 113 kickoff return yards. 113 kickoff return yards. And in terms of points, in terms of touchdowns, he also had a kickoff return touchdown in there. So all around, this was a 39-36 win by Severance. Great win for that squad. All right, everybody, time for my last segment of today's episode, where we cover the Saturday games in 3A for Week 1. First, we have Wheat Ridge versus Fort Lupton. Wheat Ridge ended up losing this one 22-24. One quick thing. I'm not sure how a 1-point safety happened in the third quarter of this one. I honestly have no clue. If somebody would be willing to fill me in on that, I'd love to know. But yeah, on the Wheat Ridge side of things, if they'd won this game, I would have heavily considered giving Isaac McCune a Playmaker of the Week spot. But Isaac McCune, he went 20 for 30 passing with 286 pass yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Giles Ballinger, the sophomore, he had 1 pass attempt, which was completed for 20 yards and a touchdown. Rushing, Isaac McCune, again, 61 rush yards and a touchdown there. Ballinger, 58 rush yards. Trey Perkins, 35 rush yards. And Devin Castillo with 25 rush yards. Receiving, Bennett Wilkes, 172 receiving yards for a touchdown. Nick Dalton with 86 receiving yards. Frank Erickson, 29 and a touchdown. Then we go down to tackles. Angel Bueno and Devin Castillo with 9 tackles apiece. We've got Frank Erickson with 4 tackles. Then we have Max Kriegbaum-Gaskill. Gaskill, he had 5 tackles. Van Lyon, the freshman, with 3, along with Nick Dalton with 3 for himself. Isaiah Flores, 2 tackles, 1 for loss, and Xavier Brown's sole tackle was for loss as well. Xavier Brown, he had a sack, by the way, and then Kriegbaum-Gaskill, he had 2 hurries. Isaac McCune, both sides of the ball here, an interception for 18 yards. Frank Erickson also had an interception for 2 yards. Bennett Wilkes and Nick Dalton, along with Isaiah Flores, each had a pass deflection. And all around, so Callum Gordon, 2 kicking points. Devin Castillo with a conversion. Gordon went 2 for 2 on PATs. I'm trying to figure out where here that 1 point in the third quarter came from. But, it is what it is. Yeah. All around, solid game from Wheat Ridge. Just couldn't pull it out over Anthony Bland Mendenhall's Blue Devils. And then finally, over to Northridge versus Gateway. Northridge ended up winning this one 37-0. You have Justin Thrill, the quarterback, with 169 pass yards and 3 touchdowns. Phil, -5 rushing yards. That's not great. But Raul Gallegos with 79 rush yards and a touchdown. Receiving-wise, Brandon Asmus with 94 receiving yards and a tutty. Caden Brink with 41 and a tutty. And then Sage Olson with 21 receiving yards. Wyatt Hill, the sophomore, with 5 receiving yards, 1 reception, but that reception was a receiving touchdown. So great job by the sophomore getting it where you needed to there. Tackles-wise, AJ Evans, 9 tackles, 1 tackle for loss. Howell Gallegos, 4 tackles, 1 for loss. Sage Olsen and Dallin Bursell also 4 tackles. A lot of guys with 2 tackles though. Leo Ariz Mendez, 2 tackles, both of which were for loss, and then Jorge Espinoza, 1 tackle that was for loss as well. Leo Ariz Mendez, 2 sacks along with 2 tackles, both of which were for loss. Wyatt Hill, the sophomore, again with an interception, and then I'm assuming, so we have the junior McKnight as well with an interception. That's Braylon McKnight with the interception. All around solid from this Northridge team. Granted, it is Gateway. Nothing against you, but Gateway's Gateway. Dylan Phipps, 5 for 5 from PATs, by the way. So solid job there, Dylan. But and then McKnight did get an interception return touchdown. So all around, Northridge, good job. I am going to have to see more from you to put you on my top 10, but that is a very solid win to open the season. So good job all around to you.
Thank you, Gideon. And it is back to me, Kodey Stauffer, where I'm going to be talking about 4A football. So let's go ahead and talk about week 0 first. Not too much to talk about here, but in this opening week, Pueblo West did beat up on Grand Junction 32-0. Gavin Lockett with a masterclass, leading the team in rushing and passing for 234 yards and combining 5 scores, 2 passing, 3 rushing. Brock Keck led the receiving corps with 5 receptions, 79 yards, and a score. And junior Garrett O'Brien catches a score while also getting an interception. Now, big news out of week 0 is that Monarch gets by Boulder 22-7, but at a cost. Asher Ewing goes out early, and junior quarterback Riley Montemayor goes in and churns out a solid 17 of 26 performance with no turnovers. He even finds pay dirt with his legs, along with senior Brody Gray, who ran for the Yotes' other 2 scores. The team win also included 6 different receivers notching receptions, so Monarch stays afloat here, and it is important to monitor this Asher and Riley situation heading forward. Now, on to week 1, where there was a ton of 4A action here. Let's just go ahead and jump into it. I think it's headlined by Bear Creek's big win, 46-13 against Lakewood. Adrian Rico connected with Ryan Bobick 7 times for 5 scores and 144 yards. Looking to be one of the best quarterback to wide receiver duos maybe in the state. We'll see how it looks against some other opponents. Now, after being down 19-7 at half, Palmer Ridge rallies with a 14-point third quarter to outlast the Montrose Redhawks in a 28-27 thriller win to start the season. Yep, we're already having some 1-point contests here in week 1. Derek Hester was solid, completing 75% of his passes, limiting turnovers, and punching it in for 3 scores while leading the team in carries against a very sturdy Montrose defense. James Jimmer Ware was the crutch of the passing game, catching 6 of Hester's 9 completions, nice, for 107 yards and a score on a night where no one else was really given anything for free. PATs matter, and this 1-point game with heavy ranking implications for playoffs stamps that. Now on to another rematch of last year's opener. Denver South, this time at All City, beat Skyline with 40-plus for the second straight season. The Ravens started the scoring with a 61-yard touchdown run, but the big plays wouldn't stop there as they had gains of 42, 33 on a hook and ladder in week 1 nonetheless, and a 21-yarder that was one of many scores at the hands of new quarterback Junior Felipe. In a season where we weren't sure on what the offense would look like, they scored 42 and gained 437 yards in week 1. Now Centaurus here, they get a big win against Boulder 35-7 with the senior combo of Chance Wood and Ben Mishke being efficient through the ground and the air. Chance threw 2 scores and 225 yards on 73% completion. And then Ben rushed for 100 plus and 2 scores. Solid win for Centaurus here. Now, in power ranking news, at least, or power ranking implied news, Blake Barnett throws 3 picks on the road against a very solid Vanguard squad in Florida, and the Tigers still only lose by a single score. That may not sound like a good thing, but I promise you this Vanguard squad is very solid. They competed in the playoffs in Florida last year, so I think that this is actually not necessarily the worst thing. This is week 1. It gives Blake some time to clean it up. It does raise some alarms, but Erie will still be in the top 10. Now, Mashu Ramakwa runs for 173 yards and 3 touchdowns as Rampart rams Coronado 49-6. I am sorry if that is butchering that name, but as I continue, the Cadets ride a steady and balanced offense to a 21-7 win over Liberty. Junior quarterback Maddox Daniels goes 14 for 19 for 186 yards and 2 touchdowns to 1 pick, while senior tailback Gabe Delamuth notches 23 carries for 121 yards and the others score. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at how the defending champs did in their week 1 matchup, where they blew out Longmont 42-14. Now, in this game, it is reported that just the Broomfield defense shut down Longmont's run game most of the night. You know, Cole Gaddis, he still had some good runs, but he was fighting for every inch. Just didn't get a lot of opportunities with this Broomfield's defense that, you know, really just clamped down on the run and forced Longmont to pass, and they just weren't really able to capitalize or adapt, the Trojans, that is. Now, Broomfield, they were able to run the ball very, very well. They had pitches that were going for a ton of yards. Colin Torres had an incredible game, and this O-line was just blowing up and, you know, leaving massive lanes to run. They would get pancakes and go to the whistle, and they just, you know, road blocks all the way for the entirety of plays, and just showing their level of dominance, getting to the second level, and just making this game nice and easy for the offense. Now, the quarterback play on both sides apparently seemed to be a little shaky. C.T. Worley, in his much anticipated start, does not throw a touchdown, but, you know, he does need to settle in and just miss some deep shots. But, you know, I think that there's nothing to panic about. It is week 1, but that is just what we were reported with. He still puts up a decent stat line, completing over 50% of his passes, but these are just the notes I have from week 1. But it doesn't matter, as Broomfield still looks like the best team in 4A following week 1. Greeley West loses to Mountain Range and just cannot get a lick of offense established as they lose 9-0. Pueblo East wins big 35-13 over Cheyenne Mountain. East allowed 305 yards to Bruce Archambault, but were stingy against the run, holding Cheyenne Mountain to only 2 rushing yards. And meanwhile, Dominic Sierra tossed 2 scores and ran for another 2 for the Pueblo East Eagles, beating Cheyenne Mountain. Thornton lost to Skyview 13-0. Vista Ridge gets embarrassed 42-7 by Legend with only 1 first down to show for it in the first half. But more on that game and about Legend's performance from Simon will come later. Fruita Monument showed that they mean business with a 46-20 win over Grand Junction Central that included 5 sacks, 7 tackles for loss, and a couple of scores on defense/special teams, those being an Aiden Anderson pick 6 and an Andres Palafox kickoff return for a touchdown. Amari Wilson held it down on the ground with 3 rushing scores on 7 carries, and Wyatt and Andres did their own damage, accounting for 31 carries, 126 yards, and a touchdown in this week 1 win. Aurora Central got blanked by Northfield Thomas Jefferson defeats Pomona on the heels of a 200-plus rushing yard performance from Dimitri Haralambopoulos, and the defense got 9 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and recovered 3 fumbles, just absolutely suffocating the Panthers. Vista Peak Prep was running away with this game against Rangeview until a fight in the third quarter would end this contest. Not sure how that's going to be officially marked down come Max Prep's time, but Vista Peak looked like they were far and above the better team. Falcon could not keep up with Fountain Fort Carson despite Carter Thorpe's best effort, rushing for 190 yards. Adams City got shut out by North Glen, 42-0. Loveland rides a 14-point third quarter to a 28-26 win over Fossil Ridge. Familiar names as far as guys like Caden Stansberry, who unofficially has 24 yards, 2 touchdowns on 6 carries, and then getting tackles on the defensive side of the ball and some hurries. And then Kodey Moore, who is also making plays for this Loveland squad, at D end and whatnot. So Loveland does get the win over Fossil Ridge there by just 2 points to start their season. The Grizzlies essentially did whatever they wanted, beating Kennedy 57-0, and the ease is most obvious from Mesa Ridge's Tanner Whittick's stat line of 3 catches for 110 yards and a score. Greeley Central got upset by Niwot 14-7, and then all quarterbacks have a great time against FOCO as Ponderosa throws 6 touchdowns and all 3 QBs have QBRs over 140. And junior watch list receiver Max Mervin goes for 217 yards and a pair of scores. They just were unstoppable on offense and red hot. And they have depth, they have options, and yeah, this is a very exciting team for sure. And then despite Kenchi's Ray's 3 rushing scores, Far Northeast would lose to Westminster 50-48 with a game-winning touchdown being thrown in the last half minute. More on that from Simon later. Monarch beats Stanley Lake to keep their undefeated season alive, and Montemara was in at QB again and didn't miss a beat, accounting for over 200 total yards and throwing 3 scores to no picks. Antonio Beal recorded 11 tackles and 2 in the backfield for the Coyotes. Meanwhile, Stanley Lake tried to survive off of a healthy dose of Liam Graham and Braden Smith, who combined for over 200 rushing yards for the Gators, and Liam scored twice, but that was just not enough to overcome Monarch. Senior quarterback for Widefield put in work, rushing for 3 scores and tossing 1 as well. That's Paul Mitchell. And then Quavon Bryant led the team in carries with 10 carries for 69 yards. Nice in a Widefield win over Harrison. Silver Creek comes out and struggles through the air despite Cole Rogers' efforts, 27 rushes for 116 yards and 3 scores, but they end up losing to Prairie View 43-35. Russell Meinke still recorded over 100 yards on just 4 catches with a long of 78, but nonetheless, the Raptors with kind of an underwhelming start, not gonna lie. Now, in Eagle news, going for 2 was no good, and the Eagles lose to the Golden Eagles. Heritage loses to Mountain Vista by a single point. But there's still plenty to be happy about here. Kurt Rosner's debut yielded 381 passing yards and 5 scores, 3 of them going to Tanner Turch, who put up an insane stat line, 12 receptions for 263 yards and 3 touchdowns. That is Playmaker of the Week worthy. It's just unfortunate that they didn't come out with the win. And then Cam Jensen and Luca Pasola had the other catches. The Eagles' run defense heritage, of course, was formidable, but they were porous on the air attack with Marzewski comfortably dismantling them. More on that later with Simon. Now, another 4A news. Grand Junction got blitzed by Glenwood, and I remember how funny they thought they were last season. I don't forget. But, I remember Grand Junction was like, hey, we beat Glenwood Springs, you were wrong. And now they just got absolutely massacred by Glenwood Springs. Wrong prediction for the wrong year, but regardless, they end up making fools of themselves. I got a memory like an elephant. I don't forget. But Will Advocate does find pay dirt, though, and, is still the stud for that Grand Junction squad. Golden gets blown up by Green Mountain, as noted by Gideon. Windsor narrowly escapes Meade 10-7. Palmer cannot outrun their turnovers and lose to 3A Sand Creek 20-12. And then Gavin Lockett was sensational in Pueblo West's win over Dakota Ridge. He opened up the scoring with a rushing score, and then after falling behind 6-7, he dots up Garrett O'Brien for a 70-yard score to pull ahead before half. Now, Dakota Ridge ties it up in the second half, and then Lockett has one last chance and runs it in for the go-ahead score with under a minute left and catapults the Cyclones into the top 10. More on that later, please stay tuned. And not to be outdone, the defense did recover a fumble to officially put the game away. And then Gateway got shut out by Northridge once again, as alluded to by Gideon. And that does it for the 4A recap before I pass it off to Simon and Gideon, who are going to take turns recapping 5A action between week 0 and week 1. And then Simon's going to do the full 5A classification recap. Then we got some power rankings and Playmakers of the week. But first, a word from one of our sponsors. Obviously, you want a trainer who can make you stronger and faster with the work you put in, but what about a trainer who can help you rehab and recover like the pros? Look no further than Junkyard Training, that not only offers specific strength and speed training, but also offers a plethora of recovery and rehab techniques like cryo, cupping, recovery boots, and so much more. Learn more today by visiting junkyardtraining.net or call 303-521-7594. Once again, visit junkyardtraining.net or call 303-521-7594 and get started today.
Okay, let's go ahead and recap the Week 0 matchup between Mountain Vista and Ralston Valley in Highlands Ranch going into this game, at least according to our preseason rankings. Ralston Valley was tied for second, and Mountain Vista sat at 5. So a big matchup to start here with potential playoff implications here. Mountain Vista would start off with the ball. It would have a pretty nice drive here with Austin Modreski finding Japri Jennings a handful of times, notably twice, to begin and go get a first down here on a curl and out route. Following that, Jack Blaze would go ahead and get a nice first down on an outside zone. That would put them past midfield there, but that's when they would kind of start to struggle here. There was a penalty for a blindside block, and then following that, it looks like there was another penalty thrown, this time on Ralston Valley, that made it 2nd and 9 though. But they would eventually go get a first down here, throwing it to Elam Parisis, I want to say, who gets the first down. But then they throw a penalty on Mountain Vista. Couldn't quite catch what it was, but it was a 5-yard penalty, making it 1st and 15. They would then try a swing pass to Carter Daniels, which was stopped pretty short here. Then they would try another screen pass to CJ Reese, but there would be a penalty on Mountain Vista, so that would make it 2nd and 19. On 2nd down, Austin would then try to scramble, but would only get a couple of yards. Here's a solid amount, making it 3rd and 10. But on 3rd down, there's a miscommunication on this throw, and so it was incomplete here. On top of that, they also throw a penalty on Mountain Vista, making it 4th and 25. And so they punt, and Ralston takes over with about 7 minutes left in the first. Ralston would start by running the ball here, but wouldn't get much yardage here. A toss would go nowhere, making it 2nd and 8. Then Logan Madden, their quarterback, would scramble for 3, making it 3rd and 5. Following that, Ralston Valley would attempt a mid-screen pass here, but it goes nowhere as Carter Daniels is there and stops it. And so just like that, Ralston Valley goes 3 and out, and Mountain Vista gets the ball back here. With about 5 minutes left here in the first quarter. But after a couple plays, it is 3rd and 6 here. They run another screen pass, and Modreski throws it, but it is bat down by Tyrese Johnson. A big play for him right there. Following that, it is 4th and 6 here, and it looks like Mountain Vista is going to go ahead and go for it. They are on the other side of the field, and so they go ahead and take a shot downfield. Austin Majewski rolls right and launches one deep, and it looks like it's on the money, but he leads his receiver, Ja'Kai Mack, a little bit too far, and he actually runs into the pole of the goalpost here. And so that's obviously incomplete, a turnover on downs. Ralston Valley gets the ball with about 4:16 left in the first on the 36-yard line. Now, Ralston Valley would get the ball, and it wouldn't go as great here. They would find themselves in a 3rd and 11 situation, but on 3rd down, Logan Madden rips a nice throw to Jackson Hansen on the comeback route, making it a 1st down on the 48. Right after that play, near midfield, Logan Madden drops back. It looks like there has to be some sort of miscommunication with the offensive line, because immediately the 2 edge rushers for Mountain Vista are released here. And so Madden is immediately under pressure, but he lets one loose, a beautiful bomb down the left sideline to Liam Beatty on a 40-ish yard pass. A huge chunk play to give Ralston Valley some life there, plus a 1st down here. A couple runs to Brady Weldon, the running back, would go ahead and make it a 3rd and 1 situation. They would try a quarterback sneak with Madden, but he'd be stopped short by number 75 of Mountain Vista there. I believe that would be number 76 of Mountain Vista. That's Orion Ulmer. And so that would bring up 4th and 1 here, but they would go ahead and run the option play here and pitch it to Brady Weldon, or get it to Weldon, and he would punch it in, making it 6-0, 7-0 after the extra points. Now, Mountain Vista will get the ball back with about 2 minutes left here in the first quarter. Still plenty of time here, but not much going their way, as, well, they would get a 1st down on a screen pass to CJ Reese, but after that, a shot down the left sideline to CJ, which was a great throw by Austin Majewski, is just dropped, and so that's a big 40 or 50 yard play that is just erased there. On 2nd down, they do a draw to Jack Blaze. Doesn't go much, and so that brings up 3rd and 6, and then on 3rd and 6, Austin Majewski is under pressure by Kit LeBlanc, forcing an incompletion and a punt there. So there you go there. Now, not much more would happen in the first quarter as Ralston Valley gets the ball here and would run a couple plays to end it. So let's fast forward to the beginning of the second quarter, about 3rd and 7 here. Ralston Valley calls their first timeout. I believe that's their first of the half here. And so they have 2 left in this half. And so following that timeout on 3rd and 7, Logan Madden on the roll right rips a nice throw to Jackson Hansen for a 1st down, making it 1st and 10 across midfield on the 48-yard line. Couple plays later, it is 3rd and 4. Ralston Valley runs an RPO here. Perfect play call. Logan Madden finds Liam Beatty on the slant, who is wide open, makes a player miss, and walks it in for the touchdown, making it 13-0 here. That's a 42-yard touchdown from Madden to Beatty, but the extra point would be blocked by Carter Daniels, making it a 13-0 game. Now, this Ralston Valley defense is fired up after that, and they get some big plays by George Patterson with a big tackle for loss on 1st down. Then Laird Jones gets a nice sack on Austin Majewski, making it 3rd and 12. Following that, Tyrese Johnson applies the pressure, forcing a 3-and-out there. Now, Ralston Valley on offense will not quite be able to get anything going here. They would actually find themselves in a 3rd and 12 situation thanks to Aiden Vincent smelling out a draw play there and stopping it short. And so on 3rd and 12, Madden tries to throw the comeback, but Bailey of Mountain Vista is there, forcing a 4th down and another punt. Now, Vista would get the ball back, and they would try to get something going here, as they don't want to go down 3 scores potentially if Ralston Valley gets the ball back. And so here we go. Couple plays in, it's 3rd and 2 here. Jack Blaze on the outside zone run here, right, that is, gets the 1st down, putting them on the 45. Following that, it looks like Austin Majewski tries to throw it on a trick play, but not too much happens there, and so that makes it 2nd and 15. Following that, Majewski tries to rush left, but only gets a couple yards, making it 3rd and 13. And then here on 3rd down, Majewski tries to take a shot down the right sideline, deep here, but it is in double coverage, and Jack Wagner gets a huge interception. It probably wasn't going to be complete either way, but a huge interception regardless to go ahead and kill that drive. Now, the struggles for this Ralston Valley offense would kind of continue here, with Carter Daniels making some pretty big plays, including a pass breakup on 2nd and 7 that would force 3rd and 7, obviously, and then another great pass breakup, which was actually almost intercepted, but would force 4th and 7 here, and eventually a 3 and out. And that would give Mountain Vista an opportunity to drive down the field here. On 3rd and 13, Austin Modreski finds CJ Reese on a deep curl that gives them a first down, putting them on the 31. Following that, it is about 4th and 3 here. Modreski, they decide to go for it. He throws a curl to Japri Jennings, who makes a great catch, all hands here, and breaks a couple of tackles, making it a first down on a gain of about 6 there. Following that, they run the ball a couple of times, which brings up a 3rd and 3 situation. Ralston Valley would eventually call their last timeout here. And so coming out of the timeout, 3rd and 3, this is what happens. They are in the red zone at this point. Modreski tosses it to Jack Blaze on what looks to be a running play, but then Blaze throws it to Sean Conway here, and so that's good for a touchdown, and the PAT is good, making it 13-7 with about a minute 36 left here. Now, Ralston Valley, would try to get something going here, but would not be able to, and so that would be the score going into the second half. Now, not too much would actually happen here in the second half. Ralston Valley would go 3 and out to start here. Nice stops by Aiden Vincent and number 18 for Mountain Vista here. I believe that is Wyatt Seaman, so there you go. Now, Mountain Vista would get the ball back, but would not get too much going on here. A big sack by number 75, Jake Huffman, would basically put this drive away, making it 3rd and 19 here. And then once more, Austin Modreski is sacked by Kit LeBlanc and Tyrese Johnson. That would force a punt. So still in the third quarter here, Ralston would get the ball here. They would not get a first down. I thought they would here. But they would not get a first down. A big sack by Aiden Vincent would knock them out of first down territory, and so they would punt it back here. But the 3 and outs continue, as Mountain Vista would also go 3 and out, as Austin on 3rd down is sacked by George Patterson and Jake Huffman again. And so there you go there. They would go 3 and out and would actually try a fake here, but it is stuffed. Luckily enough, Ralston Valley is not able to capitalize on that. They try to run it with Brady Weldon a couple of times here, and that's kind of when we get into the fourth quarter. They would actually get a first down, but there would be a kind of a interesting fumble. I mean, week 0 things happen, right? But it looked like some sort of miscommunication or some mess up with the handoff, and so the ball would be fumbled here, and Mountain Vista would recover. Let me make sure I get that. I believe that is number 3, Austin Scheich, I want to say, who would get the key fumble recovery, and that was huge because they were basically in the red zone really looking to put this one away, so that would keep them alive there. But Mountain Vista would not get too much going here. They would make a couple plays here to get a couple first downs. A nice post route to Jakai Mack would really get them going here. Eventually they would get into the red zone here, and on 3rd and 7, this was a key down here. Austin Modreski tries to throw it into the flat route for a check down, but it is dropped, bringing up 4th and 7 with about 6 minutes left here. And then on 4th down, they decide to go for it. Austin tries to throw the fade route, but it is well covered and also overthrown, so that's a turnover on downs. And that's when Ralston Valley really begins to run out the clock here. They wouldn't get the ball back to Mountain Vista until the 1 minute 45 second mark, as they would start on their 7-yard line here with 93 yards to go. To start, Austin would hit his check down, making it 2nd and 8. Following that, Modreski would then roll right, and then reverse left, and then would try to throw it up the seam to CJ Reese, but this one once more is easily intercepted by Jack Wagner, getting his second interception of the game, and just like that, that is ball game. Ralston Valley wins 13-7 in a sloppy yet big-time dub for them to start the season. Now, it wasn't as explosive of a game as we thought it would be, but it was a week 0 game. You could tell there were a lot of things that were still falling into place here. Players getting used to each other, getting used to the pressure and all that stuff. Both teams seemed a little far from being in mid-season form, which is fair. But, this is definitely a game that's going to matter down the line, especially when it comes to seeding and whatnot. Ralston Valley getting this big dub is huge for them. And then for Mountain Vista, that definitely hurts them if they wanted to get ranked above Valley or above a bunch of other teams, as well as Ralston Valley was ranked very high to start this season. So there you go there. Great game altogether, though, and a good way to start the 2023 Colorado High School football season.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to our first game recap. My name is Gideon, and today I'm going to take you through the Week 1 matchup between the Rock Canyon Jaguars and the Poudre Impalas. So, before we start, in case you don't know how I go through things here, I go through a quarter-by-quarter recap of each of the two teams, one team at a time. So first today I'll go with Poudre, and then I'll go with Rock Canyon. Then I'm going to go through defensive playmaker of the game, offensive playmaker of the game, and overall playmaker of the game for each team. Obviously, the guy who got the playmaker of the game on the winning team is going to be the playmaker of the game for the game as a whole. There are special circumstances, like last year's 1A championship game with Tell Wade, where I will make an exception, but those are very few and far between. Now, to start this off, I do have a disclaimer. So, up here at CSU, I do have a job in Rocky Mountain Student Media. The thing is that the Poudre starting quarterback, his mom's boyfriend is my boss, so I'm going to do my best to keep that potential bias from affecting my judgment when covering the Impalas this year and during today's recap, but I just wanted to fully disclose that conflict of interest with all of you here. Now, on to the game. So, starting off in the first quarter, Poudre did win the coin toss and elected to defer to Rock Canyon. Colton Mills Younger, he kicked off, which ended up being a touchback. Ryan Vandiver got a tackle on the return, and then shared one with number 22, who was not listed on the roster, before forcing a punt. Max Schubert ran for 1, followed by Matt Manns throwing to Brady Brown for 6. Manns ran for 2, but after a couple of empty downs, they decided to go for it on 4th and 9. However, after a penalty, they did punt, which went 36 off of Colton Mills Younger's foot. Now, this was actually dropped by the punt returner and recovered by Braden Barker, but due to a flag on the play, they did have to re-punt. Vandiver got another tackle, and then yet another, this time assisted by Jackson Thole. Logan Chapman got a tackle, followed shortly by Evan Griffiths. Griffiths and Vandiver shared a tackle for loss, and then Thole got another of his own. Rylan Minnick got a tackle, followed by Vandiver and Cassius Garcia, who brought down a runner for loss. This held Rock Canyon back far enough that they forced a field goal attempt, where the Impalas went down 0-3. Lockman then returned the kickoff for 21 yards, and then Max Schubert ran for 1. However, unfortunately, Matt Manns then threw a pick 6, which made it so that Poudre was down 0-10. Gary Lockman had the return but fumbled it, but thankfully for Poudre, it was recovered, which was then unfortunately followed by Schubert getting tackled for loss. Manns ran for 8 and then baited Rock Canyon offsides before the quarter ended. Entering the second quarter, after a 5-yard penalty, Manns threw to Brown for 6 yards. After a couple of nothing burger downs, Colton Mills Younger punted, where the defender tackled on a fair catch. This game you'll see throughout, but there was just a lot of ugliness happening in the play. For both teams, a lot of penalties here. Vandiver then tackled again, followed by Griffiths. Vandiver and number 22 shared a tackle again, but Poudre ultimately allowed a field goal, going down 13-0. After Chapman returned the ball for 12, Mans passed to Braden Meyer for 5. Schubert then ran for 2 before Mans targeted CMY, Colton Mills Younger, for the first time this game for 6 yards. Mans then got 12 more of his own, where Meyer did a really, really good job blocking, actually. Mans then ran for 7 more before a timeout. Chapman caught for 12, and then Thole caught for 4. An incomplete pass stopped the clock with under a minute left in the half, which then allowed Chapman to catch a 5-yard pass. However, with 16 seconds left, Coach, he spent 10 seconds arguing with the ref over an illegal man downfield call instead of calling time out. And this led to there only being a 7-yard run to close the half. When Poudre was on about the 30-yard line, they could have, with that 16 seconds, they could have done a lot. But due to an argument with the referees, they ended up having to, they got it back because they deferred to start the game. But it was not a good possession there at the end. That 2-minute drill really wasn't working. So entering the third quarter, they were down 13-0, but that we all know that that's a game that you can come back from, And so they had possession to start the half, but it was as empty as a promise from a politician, which ended up leading to a 38-yard punt by Colton Mills Younger. Then you have Chapman and Griffiths sharing a tackle, which was followed by one which is credited to Hunter Jesse. Brody Van Cleve got a tackle, but then Vandiver went on a killing spree. He got 3 tackles in a row, sharing one of them with Chapman. Van Cleve got one, followed by Quinton Orr. Griffiths had a tackle, and then Minnick had one of his own, followed by Meyer and Vandiver sharing some takeout, before Evan Griffiths got a sack and a tackle on back-to-back downs. This ended up leading to a field goal, which was blocked. But roughing the kicker was called, which was absolutely lovely to watch, I'll tell you what. After a solid goal line stand and a couple of group tackles led by Brody Van Cleve, the Impalas allowed the final score of the game, going down 20-0. After allowing a sack, there were a couple of incomplete passes. Mans connected with Brown for 12 before another sack was allowed to end the third quarter. To start the final frame, Mans passed to Chapman for 13. Schubert ran for 3, but this was brought back the very next play by an encroachment call. Mans ran for 8 and then again for 2 before Chapman got the ball 35 yards downfield. However, this preceded a holding call, so it was brought back. After an incomplete pass, the Impalas were forced to punt, which Colton Mills Younger got 61 yards. Let me say that again. 61 yards on that punt. That's Zach Talbot numbers. That's Ryan Stonehouse numbers. And he's not even the regular punter. He was filling in for the dude because he was hurt. And so Van Cleve got a tackle and then shared one with Griffiths. Meyer brought a man down before forcing a punt. Poudre tried and then failed to pull a trick play. And then Mans connected once more with Chapman for 9 yards, but holding brought it back again. All around just really undisciplined from Poudre. There was almost another interception, and then Thole did give it away on a fumble. Garrett Sims got a tackle, and then Brady Brown got one. Minnick and Vandiver combined for a takedown, and then CMY got one himself. Jesse forced a fumble, which gave them back the ball. But after an illegal motion call, Mans got the ball 35 yards on the ground. Mans then passed to Mills Younger for 5, and after some timeouts and a Griffiths tackle, the game was pretty much over. So going back over this game, the defensive playmaker of the game, I'm going to give it a co-defensive playmaker of the game. We've got Evan Griffiths and Ryan Vandiver. Griffiths and Vandiver were all over the field during this one, and they were really the main driving force behind why Poudre held Rock Canyon to 20 points. Last year, Poudre lost to this team. Like, I think it was 44-7. And so, granted, it isn't great what you were doing on offense, but holding a team that is as proven in the regular season as Rock Canyon is to only 20 points is a whole lot. Now, Poudre did lose a lot from last year's squad, and keeping themselves in the game is largely attributed to the efforts of this defense. I asked Griffiths about it a little bit after the game.
This year, you actually did way better against Rock Canyon than you all did last year. I think it was like 44-7 last year.
Yeah, definitely.
And it felt like your name was getting called on the loudspeaker every other play.
Yeah.
And so you were the main contributor on defense. You had that sack. You got like 15, 16 tackles, it felt like. What were you looking in the Rock Canyon O-line to be able to penetrate as well as you did? Because that's not an easy O-line to get past.
No, it's not. You got a lot of people there. They're huge. So, honestly, our big thing that we were doing this game was, looking at the fullback. So, I read my guard and all that, but the fullback was kind of our key guy because he would just lead us to the ball every single time, and you just had to trust that.
And obviously, offensively, it was a bit of a tough night. A lot of penalties by both teams, but especially in situations where you were only a couple of plays away from the end zone, it felt like. And so what do you think you're going to do as a team to make sure that that doesn't happen again next week?
I think we just need to keep ourselves, hold each other accountable, just get, our minds right. I think we need to come together as an offense more so, just, run through the plays a little more and make sure our steps are all good.
All right. And then I think it's Castleview on the schedule next. They do have really good pieces like Jordan Ochoa and Ryder Smith. Yeah. So, and that was a bit of a trap game last year almost.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at that team with that quality of line, are you going to be going into a similar situation, or what are you thinking about when it comes to a team that wasn't that great last year?
I think we're just going to kind of play how we did last year. I don't think they're switching up as much stuff. I mean, probably, focus more on Jordan and their other guy, but I think it'll be a good game.
Now, in terms of the offensive playmaker of the game, I'm going to go with Logan Chapman. It kind of felt like it took Poudre like a decent amount into the game to figure out exactly what was working on offense. And, I mean, obviously that's going to happen when you lose a couple of college-level guys to the graduation stage. And it felt like Logan Chapman stepped up when needed. It felt like a lot of the offensive success that opened up the run game for Mans was through Chapman's handiwork. He felt like a fast car driving into the city, and the opposing defense felt like a checkout girl. I know his last name is Chatman, not Chapman, but come on, you gotta let me have a little bit of fun here. And then we have Colton Mills Younger, who I chose as the playmaker of the game for the Poudre Impalas. I mean, Colton Mills Younger is a great player. He's got a couple of D2 offers on the table, and he was the only one kicking tonight, as I mentioned earlier. I'll put in his comments here in a moment, but his work there, and then also his contributions on the O-line and on defense, I feel like the little breathing room that Poudre was able to get on offense is due to Mills Younger. He was a large part of why Poudre only allowed one offensive touchdown all night, and let's hear what he had to say about that.
So tonight was a bit of a tough game for the team as a whole, but you had yourself a damn good night, especially on special teams, like a 60-yard punt.
Yeah.
So how are you feeling moving forward, and reflecting on tonight, what is your main takeaway?
Well, looking back on last year, we got beat 44-7, something like that. And coming out this year, our defense literally worked their butt off and only allowed 7 points because we hit the kicker, you know what I mean? But our offense needs to put in the work. So, yeah.
And when you're looking at your own personal development, making sure that you get the ball as far away from the end zone as humanly possible, what is your mental approach to kicking and punting?
I just go out and have fun. Like, before this game even started, Coach Tonkin came up to me and goes, "You're punting tonight," because both of our other punters got hurt. So so I just came out here, and I haven't punted since, I don't know, 8th or 7th grade, and I just came out here and had fun with it. So
Well, you might be in a little bit of a punter battle, as rare as that is. So, all right. And are you allowed to tell us anything about how your college, how college is looking for you?
Yeah, most definitely. I have 3 offers right now to Shadron, Black Hill State, and Fort Lewis. But yeah, I'm hoping for more. So yeah, I'm just excited. This is my senior year. I couldn't wait. Been waiting for this. I thought it was a dream today. I wanted someone to flick me because I can't believe it's week 1.
Thank you as always, Colton. And now, moving on to the Rock Canyon section of tonight's game. We're going to start in the first quarter, where Rock Canyon started this game on offense. And Gavin Nera, excuse me if I'm mispronouncing that, pitched to Tyler Meyer for 4 yards. Meyer then ran for 1 and again for 4 more before David Brab, punted. Will Rosenmeyer got a tackle, and then Chaz Barnett did the same. Abraham Chitwood got a tackle, followed by Austin Boker, before forcing an offsides penalty. Rosenmeyer actually dropped the resulting punt, but an illegal procedure call ended up saving the Jaguars on that. On the repunt, Andrew Abner got it 15 yards, but a flag brought it back to where he caught it. Owen Arnold ran for 5 and then for 4 more. Nera passed to Logan Kenny for 5, and then Meyer for 2. Nera then got it to Sam Cuthbert for 22 yards, and then to Boker for 11. So we're seeing Rock Canyon opening up the air game a lot more than in previous seasons. Meyer got it 3 yards, but after a couple of incompletions, the new kicker, Jack Anderson, was called in to kick a 25-yard field goal attempt, which he nailed, putting Rock Canyon up 3-0 in the first quarter. Anderson's kickoff then went 60 yards, which Rosenmeyer got a tackle on. Brady Campbell got a tackle, and then Abe Chitwood caught an interception and returned it 32 yards for the touchdown. This really broke the stalemate in the game and swung the momentum in the Jaguars' favor. After an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty had been assessed, Jack Anderson hit the PAT, putting Rock Canyon up 10-0. Anderson's kickoff then went 65 yards, and Campbell got a tackle for loss on the next down. Barnett got a push out before an offsides penalty, and then Brandon Stout got a tackle to end the first quarter. To open the second frame of action, Campbell and Logan Miller got a tackle to open it, but that's most of what happened before they were able to force a punt. The returner signaled a fair catch, but then got tackled, which advanced the line of scrimmage significantly on that penalty. Nera then threw to Lucas Lenzi for 6 yards before Arnold ran for 6 of his own. After a fumble, which was recovered by Arnold, Nera threw to Reed Finch, the tight end, I believe, for 6 yards, which helped allow Anderson to get in the right range to be able to punch in a field goal, putting them up 13-0 before the half. After another 50-yard kickoff, Lenzi got a stiff arm tackle, which is weird to say. It was even weirder to see, but he just pushed that man's head down into the ground before James Stevens got one of his own. Chitwood got another tackle before Boker and Barnett shared one themselves. After a group tackle, Barnett got a sack, which forced a timeout. Campbell tackled a runner out of bounds, Chitwood got a tackle, and then Rosenmeyer got a pass deflection that forced a timeout with 5 seconds left in the half. Barnett got a pass deflection, and that was halftime, with Rock Canyon up 13-0. Anderson, then opening the third quarter, had another kickoff for a touchback. And after some really, really solid defense, Rock Canyon got the ball back again. Meyer ran for 4, but after an illegal procedure call, it was 1st and 15. Meyer ran for 5, and then 3 more, and then Nera threw to Cuthbert for 7. Meyer ran for 3, and then Nera ended up getting a couple of first downs worth when he threw to Michael Thulin for 27 yards. Meyer ran for 6, but after a holding call, It was 1st and goal from the 20. They allowed a sack, and then Nira threw to Cuthbert for 5. They went for the field goal attempt, but Anderson's kick was off. However, this was due to a flag that had been called due to roughing the kicker, so they got a fresh set of downs. Eventually, they got to the 1-yard line where they got a false start penalty. But then Meyer ran for 3, and the team decided to go for it on 4th and 3. After a penalty, Meyer ran it in to seal the deal for the Jags. And after the PAT, Rock Canyon was up 20-0 after a, surprise, surprise, touchback from Jack Anderson. Kai and Gracia got a tackle, and Evan Miles got a sack. But honestly, that was most of what happened for the rest of the game. The fourth quarter was hard fought, but to be completely honest with you, it was a stalemate the entire time. Most of the action came from Poudre trying to fight back into the game, and the Rock Canyon defense doing what I just described to you for a few minutes, and shutting that down extremely effectively. And in order to go over that, we're going to have to launch into our defensive playmakers of the game in Chaz Barnett and Abraham Chitwood. Yes, we have 4 defensive playmakers of the game in this one. We won't have that very often. But my first thought when Chaz Barnett walked up to me after the game, when I'd asked one of the coaches to send him over for a quick interview, was, what in the hell are they feeding that boy? I mean, obviously he's a big fellow, right? He's listed at 6'5", 250. But nothing can prepare you for when this fellow walks up. And he's like I was the manager for Manitou's basketball team when my junior year, we had a 6'10" starting center, a 6'8" power forward, a 6'6" small forward, and a 6'6", 6'7" guy coming off the bench. And then both our varsity and JV coaches, the Vecchio father and son, Brian and Ken, they're 6'8" and 6'9", respectively. And I just thought, damn, this fella's big. And so his impact on the game is somehow even bigger than he is. And it's hard to tell that until you see him in person. And granted, he may not have had the best stats this game, but his impact was extremely palpable. And the brick wall of a man was hard to beat. He got a pass deflection, he got a sack, he got his fair share of tackles. He was just all over the field, it felt like. And he probably got a few hurries all on his own just because man saw him at a particular spot and he had to go the other direction. Otherwise, he knew he was going down. Here's what Barnett had to say about tonight's game.
Chaz, you were absolutely dominant out there tonight. You were getting all types of pressure on the quarterback, getting all types of tackles, and making your presence known. So what I'm wondering is, what holes were you seeing in the Poudre offense to be able to get to where you wanted to go? And then also, are you thinking about going anywhere for school? And if so, are you allowed to tell us where?
I'm definitely thinking about playing in college somewhere. I'm not really sure. It all depends on who offers me in these first 3 games, but definitely in the Poudre game, I think it was just all about penetration. Big thing this game was those edges and keeping it secure on those edges against that boot. And I just think the big thing for the D-line was opening up gaps for our linebackers to run in and get tackles.
Now, Chaz Barnett is probably a name that you have heard before, but unless you've really had your ear to the ground in terms of Colorado JV, this next name is going to come as a real surprise. You've got Abraham Chitwood, or Abe Chitwood, as the other co-defensive playmaker of the game. He had 12 tackles as a cornerback, along with a pass deflection and a 32-yard pick six in his first ever varsity game. Again, that's his first ever varsity action, and he gets 12 tackles along with a pick six and a pass deflection. And that's really what split the game wide open. Here's what Chitwood had to say.
What are you trying to do to make sure that the energy is feeling right when you're in those tough spots where it seems like Poudre's marching up the field with like hot knife through butter?
To be honest, I just keep my composure and talk to my teammates. Communication is our best thing, I think. And I just make sure everybody knows that they're doing a good job and just get on to the next play. If someone messes up, who cares? Get to the next play, move on, and then we'll work as a team. So that's what I think.
All right. And what was going through your mind when you got that pick six? Because that was pretty...
I got a little excited. I mean, it's my first, varsity game ever, so, I was excited, Got the moment, make sure I got the pick six, so, I'm just happy about it.
All right, very good. And are you thinking about doing college anywhere, or is this just...
I mean, if the opportunity comes around, I would definitely be open to it, yeah.
All right, very cool.
Again, Abe, thank you. And that was a very, very good varsity debut. Somebody else that is getting some more playing time than they did last year, we've got Tyler Meyer as the offensive playmaker of the game. You can also give that over to his quarterback, Nira, but I decided to give it to Meyer because he had the only offensive touchdown of the game and has consistently made it really easy for Rock Canyon to open it up. And that's a large part of why Nira had enough space to throw. The threat of Tyler Meyer just bringing it down the middle for 5-6 yards was a lot in terms of really opening it up for Nira to be able to get his 90 yards. Here's what Meyer had to say about his performance on that Thursday night.
All right, so you had the sole offensive touchdown of the game tonight, and all around you had a lot of good production out there. So when you're looking at a Poudre defense that has guys like Evan Griffiths, Colton Mills Younger, and Brody Van Cleve, what were you looking at when you were trying to find those specific holes? Because they were doing their best to keep it all close for you.
Yeah, the linebackers were flowing heavy, so we just had to do our best. O-line did a great job tonight making those blocks. Just had to look for the cutbacks, the bounces, all that. And this practice this week, we practiced a lot of that, so definitely helped a lot.
All right, very cool. And are you thinking about playing anywhere for school, or are you just...
I'm a junior right now, still got a little bit of time to worry about that stuff, but definitely am looking to play some college football.
All right.
Thank you very much, Tyler. And if you are a college coach looking for a good, speedy running back, I do recommend taking a look at Tyler Meyer out of Rock Canyon. He's a pretty solid dude. And then finally, we have the playmaker of the game. This is probably the first game where both playmakers of the game are on here because of their contributions on special teams. We have Rock Canyon's new kicker, Jack Anderson, in his varsity debut as well. Filling the shoes of Breck Sanger, Anderson ended up scoring 8 of Rock Canyon's 20 points in this game, which is more than anybody else. Both Chitwood and Meyer only scored 6. His leg gave Rock Canyon a bunch of breathing room in crucial situations where the game's momentum may have swayed otherwise. He went 2 for 2 on PATs and also went 2 for 2 on field goal attempts. Here is Anderson with comments on his first ever varsity football game.
When we're talking about today's game, this was your high school football debut, I'm told. And you had some big shoes to fill from Breck Sanger, but you stepped up and you got a few good kicks in. So what was your introduction to potentially joining the team, and how do you feel tonight went for you?
Man, yeah. Used to play soccer, and coming into the new sport, playing a position I've never played before with a brand new team for my senior year is something that not many people do, but, I came in here and in today's game, the nerves are there, but when you step on the field, you can't have those nerves. And playing this game today with these guys and stepping on the field for football, it's something that I'm going to enjoy the rest of the season with these guys. And being a senior and leading this team, I can't wait for the rest of the season.
All right. Thank you very much. And are you thinking about potentially playing in college? Because a lot of schools would want to look at your leg.
Yes, sir. Yeah. I'd love to play in college. Trying to talk to some schools right now. I've always been a sports guy. I've always loved sports since I was 3 years old. So considering this is what I'm doing now, something that I love and I'd love to pursue in college. And, I have people tell me that sports in college are some of the best times of their lives. So that's something that I'd like to pursue and do myself. So.
Well, thank you very much. And best of luck to you as well on your college searches, Jack. I know that recruiting can be a very difficult thing to pull off, but I have confidence that you'll be able to find a good home. So, in summary, if I'm being 100% honest, this game was the slowest 2-hour game I ever been to. It felt like there was penalty every other minute from both sides, and scoring was extremely rare. I'm surprised, though, really, by how well most of the newcomers did, and I feel good about how the season's going to go for both of these teams. I was very, very worried about Poudre because, like, losing Quentin Harms, losing Jordan Neeson, Jones Thomas, Logan Carell, you're losing a lot of really high value guys, Sage Cameron. And so that's a lot of guys that you don't feel comfortable with losing. And I feel like for the guys that they have stepping up to fill those shoes, they do need more of an adjustment period. But I think like with Matt Mans, I feel like he does fit much more of a run heavy offense. But I think that with some more feeling out, he'll be solid. I am a bit confused as to why Colton Mills Younger, who in my personal opinion is one of the best tight ends in the state. I'm a bit confused why they didn't target him more. They did throw, I believe, 3 passes his way in the fourth, but they only targeted him once in the first half, that I remember at least. But I feel like with a couple more weeks with a couple more weeks experience, I do feel like this team could eventually become like a 20 to 24 seed, which, I mean, it doesn't sound like much of a compliment, I know, but compared to what I thought they would be, I know this is a bit of a rebuild year. This is a transitional period. I think that like they could potentially even pull off an upset like Rocky Mountain did last season. And it feels like they're on the precipice of figuring it out. So I feel good saying that there is much more to see from this Poudre team. And I am also really gladly surprised that Rock Canyon is opening up their offense. I know that in the past we have talked a lot on this podcast about the what we saw from Rock Canyon last year, which was run it into the ground. And it feels like they have a quarterback that they can trust now. And I still have reservations about their system, if I'm being completely honest. But it feels more now like they're making the system their own and making it successful. If this experiment continues to work out for them on this level, I could see this being a season that stretches late into November for the Jaguars, if you catch my drift. Again, that's if all the chips fall right, but that's not something we could say about Rock Canyon for a long, long time. Next week, Rock Canyon will face Lee Scott Jr.'s Smoky Hill at home, which should be pretty exciting. Meanwhile, Poudre will be heading down to Castle Rock. That's a long drive to face Jordan Ochoa and Ryder Smith's Castleview Sabercats. All around, those should be good games. This week was, it was fun to watch, don't get me wrong. And it's always good to go out there, see the PMC fam, Colton, Brody, meeting new guys like Evan and Tyler. But hey, we'll be keeping an eye on you guys as the season goes on. And yeah, best of luck to everybody involved. All around good game. And hopefully we'll see you down the line. Peace.
Okay, let's go ahead and talk Cherry Creek versus Ralston Valley here. A week 1 matchup that myself, Kodey, and Gino were at here. Cherry Creek being ranked number 1 according to our preseason rankings. Ralston Valley being at tied for number 2 according to our preseason rankings, and also coming off a good win over Mountain Vista in week 0. So let's go ahead and start it off here. To start, Logan Madden starts on offense here, and he would go ahead and find Jackson Hanson on the screen. That goes for a first down on about 10 yards there. But let's go ahead and fast forward. It is 3rd and 12 here after some tough plays, and Madden tries to scramble around, but is taken down by number 40, Jake Howell, who stops him pretty short here, about 4th and 10-ish, and so they punt it with about 10 minutes left here. Now, Cherry Creek would go ahead and start on the 34 and would give the ball to Jordan Heron. For a steady dose, he would eventually get them a first down here. Following that, let's go ahead and fast forward to this 3rd and 3 situation. They hand it off to Jordan Heron, who once again makes a couple people miss before reversing fields for a 30-ish yard touchdown to make it 7-0 at 6:59 left. An electrifying play by Jordan Heron to go ahead and get this thing started, as they really leaned on him early on in this game here. Ralston Valley will get the ball back on the touchback here, but a couple tough run plays that really went nowhere if not for loss, and a penalty here for delay of game would put them in a 3rd and 15 situation, with Angelo Petrides just putting them in a tough spot in the previous play thanks to stopping Brady Weldon. And so on 3rd and 15, Madden tries to scramble right here, taking what's there, and gets about minimal yardage once more. It is 4th and 12 here, but Ralston Valley is close enough to kick it. I think they're kicking from around the 25, so this is about a 35-ish yard field goal, and so they kick it, and it is good. Creek still leads 7-3 at the 4-minute 19-second mark here. Now, Cherry Creek would get the ball here and would get a nice first down thanks to Brady Vodka finding number 19 of Cherry Creek. That is Dawson Johnson, their tight end. But a play would go wrong here. Vodka tries to throw the screen route, but it is behind his receiver, and so it hits the ground, and it is considered a fumble. And so number 25 of Ralston Valley, that is Kyle Phipps, picks this ball up and returns it about 50 yards to the house, making it a 9-7 game here. A bad snap on the PAT would make that no good, and so Ralston would only clean to this 9-7 game. At the same time, it is worth noting that one of the big-time linemen for Cherry Creek, AJ Burton, is currently out for this game, and I believe would be out for the rest of the game, which does matter. Now, Cherry Creek would get something going here. They would find themselves in kind of a tough 3rd and 13 situation, but Brady Vodka would do a quick check down pass to Cortland Johnson. That's number 5, but there is a penalty that would happen on that play that would be thrown against Ralston Valley, and so that would actually be an automatic first down here. And so that would basically end the action in the first quarter. Let's go to the second quarter where they are in the red zone. 2nd and 9 on the 23 here. Vodka finds Jordan Heron on the curl, who goes ahead and gets the first down. Now they're on the 15. Following that, there's a couple handoffs, mostly to Jaden Fox. He makes it 3rd and 4. Then they go ahead and try to throw the toss to Fox here, who gets flipped over by number 25. I believe that's Kyle Phipps, but that is still good for a first down, now on the 6-yard line. Following that, Vodka rolls out left, who then throws a quick out route to number 6, Max Lovett, the transfer from Pomona, who goes ahead and scores, retaking the lead for Creek, making it 13-9 here. PAT would actually make it 14-9 with 10:34 left. A good play here by Brady Vodka and the offense. Now, Ralston Valley, they would take over on the 20, trying to get something going, and so that's exactly what Logan Matto dials up. He goes deep down the left sideline, finding number 2 Jackson Hansen for a huge gain of about 40, and so now they're on the 40-yard line, it looks here. Following that, they would go ahead and run the ball, which would pretty much not go anywhere, but it is worth noting that Liam Beatty would actually get hurt on that play and would not return for the rest of the game, which would end up being a game changer for Ralston Valley. Fast forward to down here, it is 3rd and 4 after a Ralston Valley timeout. They throw the out route to number 2 Hansen, who gets a good gain for the first down. Fast forward a couple more plays here. It's 2nd and 7. Logan Madden drops back, but is sacked by number 95 of Cherry Creek. That is Jack Francis here, who goes ahead and makes it a tough 3rd and 15. Once again on 3rd down, Madden is flushed out the pocket, but finds number 10 of Ralston Valley. I believe that is Wyatt Morwood, who would go ahead get them a solid gain, but not a first down. It would actually still be 4th and 6 here. They would trot out their offense looking to go for it, but then would call a timeout, and then once more trot out their offense again, looking to go for it here on the other side of the field. Madden on 4th down evades the pressure and almost throws a pick here, but it is dropped and is a turnover on downs regardless. Now, Cherry Creek would get the ball and would begin marching down the field, would actually get a couple first downs to get to about midfield here, but that is when Peyton Nobel of Ralston Valley will get a huge sack on Brady Vodka, making it a tough 3rd and 22 situation. They would try to throw a short route here, which would only go for 10, making it 4th and 13. Thanks to a nice tackle by George Patterson. And so Creek would eventually punt it, but it would be a pretty bad punt as Ralston Valley basically takes over on the 30. But once more, they are not able to get anything going here. And so it is about 14-9 here going into the second half in the third quarter. Like I said, Liam Beatty at this point is out for Ralston Valley, and I believe Burden would be out for Cherry Creek. I don't think he would come back. I could be mistaken, though. But Cherry Creek, they would get the ball looking to make a statement here. And on 2nd and 8, Brady Vodka would go deep down the right sideline, finding Maxwell Lovett, who burns the defense for a huge 50-yard touchdown here, just breaking loose, making it 20-9. PAT actually making it 21-9 here. Now, Ralston Valley, the struggles continue on offense. A couple penalties here. One penalty throw on Creek, sorry, and then some other things going on 3rd and 6. Madden would find Jack Wagner wide open on the post, and it would be on the money, but it is dropped. That is at least a 20-plus, 30-plus yard gain, if not a touchdown, so that's definitely tough there. Eventually, they would try to punt it, but the snap would be way too high. Ralston Valley would recover it, but Creek would basically start on the other side on the 25 with a very short field to work with. And with a short field, you know what Cherry Creek's going to do. Brady Vodka on, I want to say it's 2nd down, rolls right and finds number 19, his tight end Dawson Johnson, who almost scores here, but is stopped on the 1. Couple plays later, it is 3rd and 1. Vodka just hands it off to Jaden Fox, who gets the job done, making it 27-9, 28-9 with the PAT as this game begins to get away from Ralston Valley. Now, Valley, they try to climb back into this one on 3rd and 16. Madden keeps the play alive and finds number 9. That is Laird Jones for a big 46-yard play here. Just a great job by Logan Madden escaping the pressure and then finding an open receiver. But eventually it would come down to 3rd down. Once more, Madden is under pressure as this pass rush continues to pick up here, and he throws it. It was definitely a forced ball here, and so this one's pretty much easily intercepted, by number 27 of Ralston Valley. That is Dwight Johnson, giving Cherry Creek the ball back. That would basically be the end of this game here. Ralston Valley would get the ball back, and Logan Madden, trying to do his best here, would throw deep, but it is intercepted by number 1, Elicio Martinez. Then eventually Brady Vodka would go ahead and run in a touchdown with about 6:50, making it 35-9, and there you go there. That is your final score. Cherry Creek, the defending state champions, coming out on top 35-9. Taking a little bit of time getting going, but once they were going, this offense showed that they had a lot of firepower here, and then this defense just picking up from where they left off. Maybe this is something that Kodey Stauffer actually said, maybe not as talented up front as last year, but you could tell they are throwing a lot more different looks at Ralston Valley, schematically on defense, and so it was very tough for this Ralston Valley team to go ahead and stop. Plus, when you lose a speedster like Liam Beatty, that obviously hurts a ton as well, along with some missed opportunities. And so Cherry Creek starts 1-0, Ralston Valley here at 1-1. This is definitely a game that will be important when it comes to seeding and playoff implications down the line. Okay, now let's go ahead and talk about 5A here. Recap both Week 0 and Week 1. We are going to start in Week 0 here for 5A here. Not too many games. There's that Ralston Valley versus Mountain Vista game, which, I talked about more in depth here. Logan Madden in that game, 16 of 25 for 218 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Brady Weldon with 86 yards. Liam Beatty, 5 receptions, 103 yards and a touchdown. Jackson Hansen, 6 receptions, 91 yards and a touchdown. Jack Wagner with 5 tackles, 2 interceptions. That's good enough for Playmaker of the Week considerations, which we'll be doing for Week 0 and Week 1 separately. And then on defense here for Valley, 5 sacks from Lair Jones, Kit LeBlanc, Tyrese Johnson, who had 2, and Jake Huffman, plus 8 total Harrys here from this defense, with 4 of them being from George Patterson. For Mountain Vista, Austin Madreski, 23 of 39, 238 yards, no touchdowns, 2 picks. Jack Blaze, 10 rushes, 40 yards. Dupree Jennings, their lead receiver, 6 receptions, 56 yards. And Carter Daniel was on defense, leading the way for them. 8 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 2 pass deflections, and 1 blocked field goal, as Ralston Valley wins that one 13-7. Now, Chatfield would play a Week 0 game against out-of-state Taylorsville from Utah. This wasn't a very good Utah team, and so really just felt like a game for them to tune up here. No Brock Narv in this game, but Chatfield takes care of business, 43-0. Jake Jones, 5 of 8 for 90 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick. Also had 10 yards and 1 rushing touchdown. Corey Ball played really well here. 10 rushes, 72 yards, and a touchdown. Chris Fortune with 36 rushing yards. Drew Rollman was their lead receiver. 2 receptions for 55 yards and 2 touchdowns. Then on defense, you have Avery DeWeese with 7 tackles and a tackle for loss. Reed Narva with a pick. And then you also had Dagan Meyer with a 69-yard punt return for a touchdown, as Chatfield wins big, 43-0 to start their regular season. Now, on this day, you also had Denver East versus Westminster. Denver East goes ahead, takes care of business, 55-19. No stats for East, but for Westminster, Mason Kiewit, 11 of 22, 163 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. Also had 30 carries for 60 yards. Elias Garcia had 4 receptions for 85 yards and 2 touchdowns, but obviously was not enough as Denver East took care of business. Like I said, 55-19. Then we have Boulder versus Monarch. Boulder playing for a Monarch, and Monarch wins here despite losing their quarterback 22-7. No stats by Boulder, but not a great start as they start 0-1. Now let's go ahead and get into the Week 1 action here. Starting on Thursday, August 24th, we have Legend versus Vista Ridge here. Vista Ridge, a 4A school, playing 5A Legend in Parker here, and Legend hammers them 42-7. Michael Marcinich in his debut as a sophomore quarterback, 7 of 8 for 142 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jaden Lawrence doing his thing as well. Only 7 carries for 59 yards and a touchdown, plus 3 receptions, 51 yards and a touchdown. Jeff Baca, their lead receiver, with 2 receptions, 53 yards. You also had 3 sacks from this Legend defense from Bettendorf. Niedring Haas, and Saez, plus 2 interceptions from Garen Edwards and Brody Schuss there, as Legend takes care of business against Vista Ridge. Actually, their defense playing really well, not allowing Vista Ridge to get past the 50-yard line and only limiting them to 1 first down in that entire first half there. And then they would get hit by a lightning delay, but by then that game was basically over as they were up 35-0. Then we have Grandview versus Overland. Grandview taking care of business 48-6. Liam Zarka in his final year, 11 of 14 for 201 yards and 2 touchdowns. Chris Banks, the sophomore running back, ran 7 times for 100 yards and a touchdown. Donovan Vernon got in there as well, 8 rushes, 83 yards. For Overland, definitely some struggles without their quarterback, Andre Veasley here, but Jarius Ward would do his thing on 19 carries, going for 116 yards. Jimenez Solis and Talio Siwas Fisher both taking snaps at quarterback, but obviously not finding too much success. Once more, Grandview wins that one 48-6. Then we got Foster Ridge versus Loveland, another 5A versus 4A matchup. Foster Ridge playing 4A Loveland here, and Foster Ridge loses a close one here, 28-26. Colton Pollock ran for 77 yards and a touchdown. New starting quarterback Nick Kubat went 8 of 11 for 100 yards and a touchdown, and then Marcus Moser had a special teams touchdown there, but that was not enough to beat 4A Loveland. Then we had Denver East versus Smoky Hill East, winning 36-0, moving to 2-0 at the start of the season. Landon Holloway with 13 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, leading them. This defense also had 6 total sackles, 2 of them from DJ Crow. Now, Boulder would once more play Centaurus here, another 4A team, and would lose this time worse, 35-7, dropping to 0-2. Mountain Range versus Greeley West. No stats from here. Mountain Range beats West 9-0. Lakewood would play 4A Bear Creek, and they would lose to them 46-13. 100 yards rushing from Julian Garcia, though. Let's go ahead and move on to Friday, August 25th. The games from there, Doherty versus Castleview. Castleview winning big, 38-3. Junior quarterback Derek Gordon really showed out here. 17 of 19 for 149 yards and 2 touchdowns. Extremely efficient. Senior running back Ethan Gonzalez, 73 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Sam Harry, lead receiver, 4 receptions, 62 yards and a touchdown. The defense for Castleview combined for 7.5 sacks, with Logan Weir and Jackson Brenner each having 2 sacks. And then you also had Daryl Ishman, who had 2 interceptions, as Castleview starts the season off great here with a huge win over Doherty to go 0-1. Then we got Thunder Ridge versus Arvada West here. Arvada West hammers Thunder Ridge 30-3. Adrian Samala, 22 carries, 155 yards, 3 touchdowns. Jaden Green adds on another 124 yards. 3 interceptions by this defense from Jaden Nichols, Atticus Tillman, and Grant Drochar, I want to say, as well as Jackson Pyatt leading this Arvada West team with 8 tackles here. Thunder Ridge not being able to score, but a huge win for Arvada West, who weirdly enough weren't able to throw the ball as well. Their starting quarterback did struggle a little bit, but you know, when your offense runs for 200 plus yards, can't complain about that. So there you go. Then we have Westminster versus Far Northeast, a thriller here in week 1 where Westminster wins 50-48 thanks to a last-second touchdown. I believe it was thrown with 29 seconds left from quarterback Mason Kiewit, who, by the way, unofficially, that is, with stats, won 17 of 24, 321 yards, 5 passing touchdowns, 182 rushing yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns, including that game winner that would give Westminster the dub over Far Northeast there. Far Northeast doing what they can. Russell Patton, he rushed for 251 yards, 2 touchdowns. Kenchis Ray had 12 carries for 126 yards and 3 touchdowns, but that was not enough to beat Westminster. Moving on, we have Horizon versus Douglas County. Douglas County taking care of business, 28-14, behind Jake Stonebreaker's 188 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Chatfield versus Cherokee Trail, another big-time thriller here. Chatfield would actually win this one 27-24 here. Here is what would happen. Or here, let me talk about the stats and then I'll talk about what happened here. Jake Jones, 16 of 37, 1 touchdown to 2 picks. Brock Narva, 135 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. Michael Lumpkin, lead receiver with 3 receptions, 80 yards, 1 touchdown. The defense would actually force 3 fumbles, including 2 of them being recovered by Nate Helms and Kodey Wittig. And then the big thing for Chatfield here was that Andrew Aston, their kicker, went 2 of 3 from the field here, including a huge 35-yard field goal at the end of the third. That would mean the difference between a win and a loss. That would have made it 27-24, and then Chatfield would actually recover one of those fumbles with about 5 minutes left. That would have killed a very promising drive by Cherokee Trail. Cherokee Trail, they would actually start a new quarterback compared to last year where they rolled with Elliot Ming. This time they had Tyson Smith, a junior, as well, and in his first start he did well, going 16 of 23 for 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, only 1 pick. Peyton Summers, his receiver, 7 receptions, 137 yards and a touchdown, but falling just short to Chatfield here, as Chatfield moves to 2-0 while Cherokee Trail drops to 0-1. Then we got Fairview versus Highlands Ranch. This was a pretty easy win for Fairview, 44-3. Jordan Rochelle, 9 carries for 125 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 5 receptions for 98 yards and a receiving touchdown. This defense also had 3 interceptions from Cole Mathis, Jace Hines, and Wyatt Keegan, all grabbing one as they take care of business to start 1-0. Then we have Ralston Valley versus Cherry Creek. This was a game that I recapped here as well, but just to talk about some stats here. Cherry Creek has no stats in, so I'll just read off Ralston Valley's. Logan Madden, 11 of 21, 200 yards, no touchdowns, 2 picks. Their lead rusher was Brady Wonin with 17 yards here. Their lead receiver was Jackson Hansen, 6 receptions for 90 yards, as they lost a tough one to Cherry Creek. So there you go there. Moving on here, we have Columbine versus Mullen. No stats put in yet, but Columbine, as expected, took care of business versus Mullen here, winning big, 56-6. Then we have Arapahoe versus Legacy. This was a huge game as Arapahoe with a huge upset, 31-9 over Legacy. They would amass a 17-0 lead at halftime with one passing touchdown, one rushing touchdown, and a field goal all hit, while, obviously holding down Legacy to a mere 0 points. Another passing touchdown with 11 minutes left in the third would make it 24-0 as this Arapahoe defense played extremely well. Will Knox with 11 tackles for them. Now for Legacy, they just struggled. Cullum Lerma 16 of 32, completing half his passes for 114 yards, one pick, only had 46 rushing yards. Tyler Anderson 13 carries for 75 yards and a touchdown. Very disappointing start to the season for Legacy, but still a long one ahead. If you're a Arapahoe, you got to feel good about this one, punching up and taking out a team that at least we had ranked in front of them. So there you go there, and gaining some confidence as well. Now talking Eagle Crest versus Bryden, this was a pretty easy 37-14 win for Eagle Crest. Joe Steiner, the junior quarterback, got the start here, went 14 of 17 for 162 yards and a touchdown, also had 37 rushing yards. Then Logan Ryan, his lead receiver as a senior, 6 receptions, 97 yards. As like I said, they beat Bryden 37-14. Fountain Fort Carson would then play for a Falcon, where they took care of business, winning 49-18. It was 35-12 at half. Matthias Price at running back, 191 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, including a 41-yard receiving touchdown. You also have Terrence Morris, who only had 3 carries, it says here, but he went for 121 yards and 3 touchdowns. So there you go there. Fort Collins would play a 4A team in Ponderosa, but it would go the opposite way. Fort Collins losing 56-21. Pondo throwing for a combined 406 yards and 6 touchdowns on them, as that is tough for them. Mountain Vista playing another 4A team in Heritage, just barely avoiding the upset, 35-34 in a win here with about 3 minutes left in the third. A Jack Blaze rushing touchdown will make it 35-28. This would stay the case until about, I want to say, the last minute here in the fourth quarter, where Kurt Rossner for Heritage would throw a 13-yard touchdown pass, making it 35-34. But Heritage would go for 2 instead of taking the PAT, and Mountain Vista's defense would come up with a big stop and win 35-34. Austin Madreski, 17 of 29 for 3 touchdowns. Jack Blaze, 70 rushing yards, 1 touchdown, 3 receptions, 67 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. That's obviously good for Playmaker of the Week considerations. Japri Jennings for a second straight week leads all receivers with 4 receptions, 68 yards. Carter Daniels with 15 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, a sack, and a forced fumble, as Mountain Vista avoids 0-2 and goes 1-1. North Glen would play 4A Adams City, where they would win 42-0. Prairie View would play 4A Silver Creek, where they would win a close one, 43-35. I'm not sure about this, but I heard the quarterback, Kunio Hishima, he threw for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns, something like that. And then Pomona versus Thomas Jefferson. Pomona did not stand a chance. They lost 19-6. Moving on to the Saturday slate of games from August 26th, Rocky Mountain versus Chaparral. Rocky Mountain winning a thriller 20-16. Rocky was down 16-6, but battled back, scoring their last touchdown with 1:30 seconds left in the fourth. Then Dylan Green of Rocky Mountain will get an interception that would save that game. For Chaparral, Nolan Segal, 92 rushing yards, a touchdown, also 86 receiving yards and a touchdown, while Tevin Stokes kind of struggled here, 7 of 23, 151 yards, 1 touchdown to 2 picks, including the one at the end of the game there. Then last but not least, we have Valor Christian versus Regis Jesuit. I apologize. I was not able to make this one. I've been feeling a little under the weather. Maybe you've been able to hear in my voice here. But here's basically what happened at half. It was a close game, 14-13. I believe Regis had the lead, but Regis would go ahead and take a 21-13 lead at the end of the fourth here. Valor would tie it with about 8 minutes left in the fourth, but then Regis Jesuit would hit a field goal with 5:41 left in the fourth, making it 24-21, and would hold on to win, as Valor Christian would not be able to get it done here. Regis Jesuit winning in the regular season for the second straight year in a row here. Anthony Medina for Regis Jesuit had about 150 plus yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. For Valor Christian, Asher Widener, 20 of 34, 264 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. 45 rushing yards and a touchdown. Gabe Sawchuk got the ball a lot here, 17 rushes, 56 yards, 5 receptions, 93 yards, receiving yards that is, and then Cash Spence, their lead receiver, with 7 receptions, 71 yards, and a touchdown. Anthony Medina being a Playmaker of the Week candidate as well. So there you go there. That is the recap from weeks 1 and 0 for 5A. Okay, we got the power rankings here for post week 1 here, technically, or week 1 power rankings. We're going to start with 1A, go all the way up to 5A here. But before I do that, let me talk about our process. So there are 4 people here on the podcast, myself, Kodey, Gideon, and Gino. We each personally rank each team 1 through 10 here. Not the same amount of teams, but for each classification, we have our own little 1 through 10 there. And then if you are ranked at number 1, then you get 10 points, 2, 9 points, 3, 8 points, so on and so on. The teams with the most points from all 4 of us collectively get ranked the highest, and so forth and so forth. So that is how that works here. Now for this, I am going to talk about some notes that Kodey put down that he wanted me to say, and then I am going to mention some things that Gino made note of as he was doing his rankings. But basically, our PMC rankings are, well, they're the average of our 4 here, okay? So not one person controls so much of the rankings there, all right? Now let's go ahead and hop into 1A here. Just for y'all to remember our preseason rankings, in 1A went Lyman at 1, Strasburg 2, Holyoke 3, Ray 4, Centauri 5, Banning Lewis Academy 6, Meeker 7, Rye 8, Estes Park 9, North Fork 10, with Gunnison, Colorado Springs Christian, Highland, and Manual getting top 10 votes from one of us 4 as well. Now, after week 0 and week 1, here is what we have now. At number 1, Lyman still stands. At number 2, we have a new face, Holyoke. 3, Ray. 4, Banning Lewis Academy. 5, Strasburg. 6, Meeker. 7, Rye. 8, Buena Vista. 9, Gunnison. 10, Centauri. And then just out with votes from, in the top 10 here, North Fork, Manual, and Yuma here. Yuma just being 2 points out the top 10. Now, let me start with Kodey's top 10 here, starting with Centauri, who he ranked at 8. He said an upset loss to a 2A team in Pagosa Springs isn't the worst, but it's not the most encouraging look here. Centauri for us dropped 5 spots in our PMC rankings, so obviously definitely tough, as I believe Gino also dropped them outside his top 10 as well, and then myself and Gideon did the same. So tough go there for Centauri, who landed at 10. At 9 is Gunnison for us. Kodey would personally put them at 10. He said also 2-0 and beating a solid Aspen squad, along with losses ahead of them, Squeaks Gunnison in here, excuse me. So there you go there. Gunnison would move up, it looks like, 2 spots from being just out to inside the top 10 for us. Then we have Buena Vista at 8. Kodey put them at 9. He said the strength of opponent is not overwhelming, but a score margin of 63-0 over 2 games with multiple playmakers over 2 weeks here is huge. So there you go there. Buena Vista making the top 10 for the first time this season. Following that, Rye for us is at 7. They didn't play today, but a lot of teams lost, so that's why they were able to move up a spot. Meeker was also able to move up a spot here at 6 here. Kodey did say a huge 1-point win over North Fork moves the Cowboys up a spot here, which is true in our PMC rankings. Strasburg takes a pretty steep fall here, down 3 spots now to number 5 in our PMC rankings. Kodey actually put Strasburg at 4. He said not going to punish them too hard with a loss on the road to start the season, but if other teams beat other impressive teams, they could slide. So we'll just have to see about Strasburg, who is currently at number 5 after a tough blowout loss to Holyoke. Banning Lewis Academy for us would actually move up to the 4 spot, which is 2 more spots than before in the preseason. Kodey said a nice 50 burger with everything clicking in week 1 is great to move up a couple. Combined with a couple other teams losing, I think that also moves Banning Lewis into this spot. Ray technically moves up 1 spot here. They took care of Highland with a 40-point win, Kodey says. Holyoke, Kodey was actually able to go to this game. Holyoke is now at 2, moving up a spot. Kodey says, huge win over Strasburg where they suffocated receivers and made big plays on both sides of the ball. So there you go there, Holyoke at 2. Then Lyman still at 1. They rolled over Florence. Still really hasn't been tested. I mean, it's week 1, so there you go there. A couple changes here in 1A to start the season. Okay, moving on here. Let's go to 2A here. Our preseason rankings for 2A went. Number 10 was a 3-way tie between La Junta, Englewood, and Florence. Number 9, Basalt. Number 8, Montezuma Cortez. 7, Alamosa. 6, Rifle. Tied for 4th was University and Berthoud. 3, Elizabeth. 2, Eden. 1, Delta. Now, after week 1 and 0, here's how those rankings look. At number 10, Montezuma Cortez. Number 9, TCA, coming up from being unranked. At 8, La Junta. 7, University. 6, Basalt. 5, Eden. 4, Rifle. 3, Berthoud. 2, Elizabeth. And number 1, Delta. Let's go ahead and start with Kodey's notes here. So, at number 10 was Montezuma Cortez, who he actually didn't rank at all. It was myself and Gino who would rate Montezuma Cortez. Gideon had them just outside here. They would lose an out-of-state game, so that wasn't the best look. But for now, we just need to see how they do against Colorado talent. So for now, they are sitting at that 10 spot here. Oh, and also, by the way, just that was Pagosa Springs, Alamosa, and Englewood who got votes as well. So there you go there. This was a close one here. Moving on, we have TCA now at 9, moving up from unranked. Kodey actually had TCA at 6. He said after an upset win on the road, the Titans slingshot into the top 10. I also want to say that Gino would put TCA at 7, I want to say. Or sorry, that would be 8 as well. Gideon would shoot up TCA all the way to 3. So there you go there. I would not have TCA ranked yet. But, you know, I have my reasons for that. So there you go, TCA at 9, moving up from being unranked. Then we have La Junta at 8, previously at 10 the week before. Now they move up 2 spots. This is what Kodey had to say about La Junta. It was Burlington, but a 40-point shutout against a playoff team in 1A will award a top 10 spot. In addition, Gino put La Junta at 9, Gideon put them at 10, and I moved them up to 6 here. So there you go there, as they are looking to start the season off a little bit differently. Now on to 7 here after week 1. We have University, who drops 3 spots after a tough loss to Delta, which frankly wasn't as close as the scoreboard shown here. This is what Kodey has to say about University, who he actually put at 9, much lower than what we had them ranked. But he said University had a real chance to make a statement here at home, but will improve from this and be a tough out going forward. Definitely agreed there, but everyone else, including myself, dropped University significantly. I dropped them down to 5 here. Gideon would drop them down to 8. And then I think Gino would drop them to 7. And Kodey, like I said, put them to 9. So University dropping after a tough loss to Delta, which wasn't that close. Basalt, on the other hand, would move up in their place, moving up 3 spots compared to last week. This is what Kodey had to say about that. He said Basalt has come out the gate really strong and showing dominance on both sides of the football, as they did play 2 games, week 1 and week 0. So now they are 2-0 here, and so they move up pretty much for everyone. So there you go. Then we have Eden here at 5. They are now down 3 spots. They were previously ranked at number 2. Now they're at 5 here. This is what Kodey has to say about Eden. He puts them at 7. And he says, while I'm not going to hit the panic alarm, it was alarming seeing Eden lose a game at home to start the season. We will see how this young group bounces back. So there you go there. Gideon would drop Eden to 4. Gino would drop Eden, it looks like, to 6. And then Kodey dropped them the farthest here down to 7. But for now, in our PMC rankings, they're at 5. At 4 is Rifle. They did not have a game, so there you go. But with a couple of teams losing, they definitely move up here. So there you go there. At 3, you have Berthoud, which got a big win over Timnath. And by the way, they get their quarterback Darren Davidson from 2 years ago, who I was very high on. I liked his promises. And so coming back to Berthoud will be a huge boost for them as they make a state championship push. This is what Kodey has to say about Berthoud, who he put at 4. He said a solid win against an opponent that is inferior is a good way to start the season, but we will see how they look against others first. So there you go. There, Berthoud at 3. Kodey put them at 4. I believe the rest of us moved up Berthoud as other teams lost. So there you go. At number 2 now is Elizabeth. This is what Kodey had to say about them, who he had at 2. He said not a dominant win, or a nice dominant win to establish how Elizabeth plans to handle business moving forward, as they did blow out Devlin. And I believe actually 3 out of the 4 of us put Elizabeth at number 2. I was the lone exception, putting them at 3. I would put Berthoud at 2 instead. And then unanimously, we all had Delta at number 1, especially after a good win over University. So, boom, those are your 2A power rankings. Okay, moving on to 3A here. Let's start with our preseason rankings. Just out / got votes for our top 10 here was Pueblo Central, Northfield, and Frederick. Then at 10 officially was George Washington, 9 Conifer, who was tied with Severance here actually at 8. Then we had Durango following that at 7, Thompson Valley at 6, Resurrection Christian at 5, Holy Family at 4, Green Mountain at 3, Roosevelt at 2, and Lutheran at 1. Now, after week 1, here are the teams that are just out. We have a couple here. Pueblo Central, Conifer, Glenwood Springs, and Pueblo County all got votes in our top 10. But here at our top 10, after week 1, we have Durango dropping down a couple spots after their out-of-state loss here at 10. Tied for 8 still is George Washington and Severance here. Following that, Northfield is at 7. Then we have Thompson Valley at 6, Resurrection Christian at 5, Holy Family at 4, Green Mountain at 3, Roosevelt at 2, and Lutheran stays at 1 here. Not much changes here. 1 through 6 pretty much stays the same. That's Lutheran, Roosevelt, Green Mountain, Holy Family, Resurrection Christian, and Thompson Valley not moving up or down. Severance technically stays the same, tied here at 8th here. But you do see G-Dub, George Washington move up a couple. Northfield moving up from being unranked, at least in our top 10. And then Durango dropping a couple spots. Let's go ahead and see what Kodey has to say here. Let's start with Durango, who's now at 10. He said after blowing out Farmington just a year ago, the Demons lose this out-of-state game this season and look shaky doing it. At number 9, he would then put Severance, who is tied for 8th in our rankings. He said, gotta feel good for being able to pull out the win, but the defense allowing Canyon City to score this many points comes off as a red flag. So there you go there. Then he would put Conifer at 8, who's not ranked in our top 10, but this is what he said. They won on a solid defensive performance and a balanced offensive approach. And then he would put Northfield at 7. He said they've been dominant for 2 weeks, playing week 1 and 0. And are a scary trending team right now, which absolutely agreed. But for the most part, the majority of these rankings in 3A stays the same. Okay, now let's go ahead and move on to 4A here. In the preseason, there are 3 teams that were just out. Windsor, Longmont, and Bear Creek all receiving top 10 votes. But our official top 10, at least for the podcast, was number 10, Vista Ridge, number 9, Dakota Ridge, 8, Loveland, 7, Palmer Ridge, 6, Ponderosa, 5, Heritage, 4, Mesa Ridge, 3, Montrose, 2, Erie, and number 1, your defending state champs, the Broomfield Eagles. Now, after a pretty crazy week 1 and 0, we have a bit of a shakeup here. Now, just out is Windsor and Dakota Ridge, each receiving top 10 votes. So there you go. But at our 10 spot, we are tied here with Denver South and Bear Creek receiving the same amount of points. So they are tied for 10. At 9, we have Pueblo West. Loveland is at 8, 7, Montrose, 6, Heritage, 5, Erie, 4, Mesa Ridge, 3, Palmer Ridge, 2, Ponderosa, and still at number 1 is Broomfield here. Let's go ahead and start at 10, where Kodey would actually put Denver South here, and this is what he has to say about them. Junior Felipe's debut meant 330-plus passing yards, just yards in general, and 5 total touchdowns and a well-balanced offense with over 260-plus yards of passing and rushing. The Ravens' defense I still think could improve, but has the talent. So there you go there, Denver South making a push here. Bear Creek was a team that got top 10 votes from a couple of our members here as well. Gino, I think, would go ahead and put them at 8 here. So that would go ahead and be enough to tie for them to be in this 10 spot. At number 9 now is Pueblo West. This is what Kodey had to say about Pueblo West, who he also put at 9. He said P-Dub gets the dub on the road and takes Dakota Ridge's spot here in the top 10, at least for his personal rankings. So there you go there. Pueblo West moving into that spot in place of Dakota Ridge. Now, moving on here, we go ahead and we put Montrose at 7, falling a little bit here after a 1-point loss to Palmer Ridge on the road, I believe. This is what Kodey had to say about Montrose, who he put at 7. Blowing a 19-7 lead as a run-heavy, suffocating defense is a tough way to go, and that's why the slide is a little dramatic here. And there's no worries there, as that slide also reflects in the majority of our rankings here. Gideon having them at 7 here, as well as Gino and Kodey. Actually, they all put them at 7. I kept Montrose up there, not too much higher, but at 6 for now. That is good enough to put Montrose at 7, where they drop a spot. Then we have Heritage, who also drops a spot here. Not as many as Montrose, but they do move down to 1 spot, losing a game here. Kodey actually has them at 4 still. He said a 1-point loss against 5A Mountain Vista, trying to go for the win, is not going to cost us highly talented Eagle squad a spot yet. A couple other of us had Heritage ranked a little bit lower here. It looks like Gideon has Heritage ranked at 6. Gino has them ranked at 9. Kodey obviously has them at 4, as well as me, and so that kind of evens out for that 6 spot. At number 5 is Erie, who does drop 3 spots here. This is what Kodey says about Erie. He said it's not the quality of the opponent, the location, or the score. It's the 3 interceptions that slides Erie down. If they get another slow start to this year, I'm not going to wait on them this time. They'll have plenty of opportunities for movement coming up, as they do have kind of a tougher schedule, which agreed here. But yeah, losing a 1-score game to out-of-state Vanguard, that's a tough go. So there you go. At number 4 is Mesa Ridge. They kind of stay there for us. They were there for our preseason. This is what Kodey has to say about Mesa Ridge, who he has at 5. He said they won how they should have. Plain and simple, they blew out Kennedy, and that's what we all expected them to do. So there you go. Palmer Ridge moves up a couple of spots here. They're now at 3. Kodey has Palmer Ridge ranked at 2. He says a comeback win over Montrose to start the season. That's an impressive start to the season for a heavyweight that isn't fading away. And you got to imagine as well, this is a Palmer Ridge team with a new head coaching staff and a couple new faces there. That's a very impressive win for them as they look to make a push for that state championship. At number 2, though, is Ponderosa, who moves up a couple of spots. Kodey actually had Pondo at 3 here. This is what he had to say about them. He said 50 burger on a 5A opponent to start the season where everything is clicking is good enough for this squad. And yes, absolutely agreed. Was a little concerned about their quarterbacks, but they did bring in Aurelio Marchio, who got some playing time, but Marcus Price really showed out in this game against Fort Collins as they blew them out. He threw for like 268 yards and at least 3 or 4 touchdowns against them. That's big time, as Pondo is making moves here and is in that contention bracket. And then at number 1 stays Broomfield. Kodey just has a dominant win to start, as we all agree here. Beating Longmont by a lot here. It wasn't close. Longmont was a team that, some of us had votes for top 10, and now they don't. So there you go there. Broomfield continuing their dominance. Okay, now let's move on to 5A here to end this segment here. I am going to say this. This is probably our craziest rankings here. Myself, Gideon, Gino, and Kodey have pretty different teams, like the same amount of teams, same teams in that mix here, basically, but ranked at different spots. Cherry Creek is the only one who stayed the same for all of us, I want to say. So just keep that in mind. But let's go ahead and talk preseason rankings here before we talk about our updated rankings. Let's start with just out here. Doherty, Grandview, and Fairview all got votes for the top 10, but just finished outside. Tied at 9 was Legacy and Chatfield. 8, Columbine. Tied at 6 was Fountain, Fort Carson, and Legend. 5, Mountain Vista. 4, Pine Creek. Tied for second was Ralston Valley and Valor Christian. And at number 1 was Cherry Creek. Like I said, pretty crazy to start here. But after a very eventful week 1 and week 0, which saw a lot of movement here is what our updated 5A power rankings look like. Just outside the top 10, Fairview with 4 points. 3 points. Mountain Vista with 4 points and Arapahoe with 2, all on the outside looking in here. At number 10, coming in from unranked, is Regis Jesuit. At number 9 is Chatfield. 8, Columbine. Both of those teams stayed there. Fountain, Fort Carson moves down slightly, which isn't on them, but they are now at 7 here. At 6, Valor Christian moves down a couple of spots. Ralston Valley moves down a couple of spots, who is now at 5, right after Valor Christian. At 4 now is Legend, who's moved up. Grandview, who was previously unranked, is now 3. At 2 is Pine Creek, who moved up a couple of spots. And like I said, Cherry Creek remains number 1 right now. Okay, so I'm going to read Kodey's notes to start here because he actually has Arapahoe at 10, who is just outside here. He said the Arab defense suffocated the Lightning attack. That's Legacy, holding Cullen Larmer to just 50% completion in a pick from Wyatt Starbuck. They contested a ton of passes and were constantly pressuring the quarterback and rode that to a quality and defining win. That's enough to put them there at 10. For us, Regis Jesuit was at 10. Myself and Gideon ranked them right there at 10. Kodey had them a little bit higher here at 7. And then I believe Gino did not have them ranked here. So that's interesting. So not yet there. But Regis Jesuit at 10 there. We have Columbine and Chatfield at 8 and 9 here. That doesn't change much according to our PMC rankings, but it looks like Kodey might have moved them up in his rankings here. Or no, sorry, he did not move them up. But let me go ahead and talk about Chatfield here, who is now at 9. He says a huge fumble recovery on the goal line helps the Chargers, sneak out a close one against Cherokee Trail, and they continue to show their weapons on offense. Then about Columbine, he said they won a game against a beatable Mullen squad, but didn't really show any vulnerabilities. So there you go there. Chatfield for us at 9 and 8. Kodey has them ranked a little bit higher. At 7, we have Fountain, Fort Carson here. Kodey doesn't actually have them ranked in the top 10 at all. So there's that. But myself, Gino, and Gideon have them ranked all kind of in similar spots here. I believe I have them ranked at 6. Gideon has them ranked at 7. And then Gino has them ranked the highest at 4. So a little all over the place, but Fountain, Fort Carson took care of business against Falcon, beating them pretty handedly, not even really having to pass against them. So there you go. Gotta love that. Okay, moving on to 6 here, at least according to our PMC rankings. That's where we have Valor Christian. Kodey would put Valor at 8 here. This is what he had to say about them. He said, tough week 1 loss on the road with plenty of notes on how and where to improve. Another loss to a good Pine Creek squad, though, next week might push them out of the top 10, so they'll come out with some tricks, hopefully. Gino should be at that game right here in the Springs, so that'll be a good one. But for now, Valor sits at 6, the lowest they've ever been in podcast history, actually, when it comes to rankings. So there you go there. At 5 is Ralston Valley. Kodey actually put Ralston Valley at 9. This is what he had to said. After heading into the half against Cherry Creek down 9-14, this game felt very much in reach, but quickly got out of hand here with bad drops and a line unit that doesn't platoon facing a defensive line unit that's 6 deep. Just didn't stand the test of time over the course of the game. So he drops Ralston to number 9. For us, Ralston Valley is ranked at 5. Myself, Gideon, and Gino having them ranked in the top 5 here. So there you go there. But according to our PMC rankings, they're at 5. At number 4, we have Legend. He has Legend just above here at 3. He says the defense was legit Thursday and the offense will only get better as the season goes on. Absolutely agree. Legend moves up, and like I said, I've been high on Legend. I think they'll go undefeated. I think they have a talented squad. Michael Marcinich, he made his start finally here, and he looked great, like I always thought he would. And so, boom, there you go. There, Legend on the rise for sure. But speaking on teams on the rise is Grandview, who is not ranked in our top 10, but are now ranked up here. Kodey has Grandview at 2. He says the balance of this offense just strikes me as one of the better chances of a team that could beat Cherry Creek here. Other people who have Grandview up there, Gideon has Grandview at 2 here. Gino does not have, he has Grandview ranked, it looks like, at 7. So no bias there from him, obviously. And then I have Grandview ranked up here just outside the top 5. But for now, they are ranked number 3 in our rankings. So there you go there. At number 2 is Pine Creek, who moves up a couple spots. Didn't play a game because their out-of-state opponent forfeited. So I think most of us kept them there. Kodey kept them at 4 here, but I won, and I think Gino did the same, but myself and Gideon moved up Pine Creek. I moved up Pine Creek to 2. Gideon moved them up to 3 here as teams like Ralston Valley and Valor lose, clearing the way for Pine Creek to hopefully take their spot here. But Pine Creek, they do face a tough opponent in Valor Christian. If they could get this win, that really solidifies them as a true contender moving forward, as they do play Valor at home too, by the way. Then at number 1 is Cherry Creek. This is what Kodey has to say about them. Adjusted and played a perfect second half to just dominate one of the other best teams in the state. Absolutely agreed. Looked a little shaky to start, but it is week 1, so not too much to worry about here. Brady Vodka looked really confident, which is good here, considering how that state championship game went. I think he's going to be extremely dangerous here in 5A this season. On top of that, this defense, extremely well coached per usual, showed a lot of different looks and did a good job slowing down Ralston Valley, so gotta be happy about that. But Cherry Creek will be contending for state once more this year, no doubt about that. But there you go there. Those are our power rankings following week 0 and week 1.
Thank you, Coach V, for doing those power rankings for us. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how they change, and it's going to be very dramatic over these first few weeks. But now we're going to talk about our Playmakers of the Week, brought to you by Code Red Coaching. For all of your mental performance needs, be sure to check out Code Red Coaching at coderedcoaching.com, or feel free to call today, 720-979-1914, and set up your first appointment where you can perform like our Playmakers of the Week. So, Playmakers of the Week, we're actually going to go over kind of 2 weeks here between week 0 and week 1. The week 0 Playmaker of the Week, in a very thin kind of crowd here, is going to be Caleb Camp, 10 carries, 109 yards, and 3 touchdowns, while also having a catch for 18 yards and a score and 7 tackles on the defensive side of the football, and, helping this Buena Vista team build a case to be top 10. Now, in 2A, Gino did have 2 nominees. Both were from Basalt, one of them being Will Tarallo, who had 19 carries for 127 yards, but ultimately ended up giving it to Taylor Hayes of Basalt, who had 3 carries for 44 yards, and then 2 receiving touchdowns and an interception, having an impact on both sides of the ball, is going to get him Playmaker of the Week for week 0. Now, Gideon, when talking about the Playmaker of the Week for 3A in week 0, said it was a tough decision between Mason Markovich and Joaquin Sandoval. Both were on the Glenwood squad that barely beat Aspen, and both produced on O and D. However, Markovich getting the interception touchdown, the fumble recovery, and his 200 aggregate yards pushed him just barely ahead of his counterpart. I did consider having co-Playmakers of the Week, but it didn't feel right. So congratulations, Mason Markovich of Glenwood Springs, being your 3A week 0 Playmaker of the Week. Now for 4A, I had, just a couple of options here, and I was maybe considering going with Riley Montemayor, who stepped in for Asher Ewing, but I'm going to go to a different Coyote here, and that is the face of stability in this week 0 win, Brody Gray, who had 15 carries for 81 yards and 2 scores to keep the Yotes steady in their win over Boulder. Now for 5A, Simon had 2 nominees for week 0. One was Jake Jones, who just went nuts, 5 for 8, 90 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick, and then 10 rushing yards and a touchdown in their huge win over an out-of-state opponent, where they ended up pulling the starters at half, and he had some very nice-looking passes in that. But ultimately, he went with the playmaker of the game from the one that we attended, and that was Jack Wagner. 5 tackles, 2 interceptions, along with the game-sealing interception. The other interception being clutch earlier in the game, but the game-sealing pick is ultimately what pushes Jack Wagner over as the playmaker of the game and as the playmaker of the week for week 0. Now, week 1 is where things get a little bit more intense here. And, for me, in the 1A classification, there were some Buena Vista guys that played really well. Once again, Camp, as well as sophomore stud back Eli. There are some Lyman guys who, the Badgers won big against Florence, by the way. I don't think I mentioned that, but, they had a big win as well. But I'm going to go to the Meeker and North Fork game and go for kind of an interesting poll here and crown Ryan Sullivan, who played efficiently on 9 of 14 for 77 yards, but ultimately wins Playmaker of the Week with his game-winning 2-point conversion throw to Jake Blazin. The same target that he had for a touchdown pass earlier in the game is the same one that comes down with the game-winning 2-point conversion. That is what is going to push this nominee over the rest, is hitting a game winner here on a touchdown pass. With the stats available, I was also considering Wiggins and who is scoring their touchdown and go ahead, but they did not have stats available on who did that. So, for now, we got Ryan Sullivan as your 1A Week 1 Playmaker of the Week. Week 1 Playmakers of the Week, once again, brought to you by Code Red Coaching. Be sure to check them out on coderedcoaching.com. And, remember, the grind to greatness starts with the mind. Continuing down this Week 1 Playmaker of the Week kind of selection here, Gino had a few different guys to choose from. Nominees included Trevor Lucero, who had 7 touchdowns that were passing, 350 yards. Also, Azuya Gracie from Wellington, 19 tackles, 3 hurries, and was a part of this Wellington squad that only allowed 6 points in an 8-6 win. Thomas Krupp out of Steamboat had 174 yards rushing, 2 receptions for 55 yards, 3 touchdowns between those two things, and carried the offense in a close game. Cooper Connolly from Elizabeth had 17 carries for 188 yards and 4 rushing touchdowns, as well as a pick 6 on defense. Lots of big numbers, lots of multiple touchdown performances here, but ultimately Jariah Ariano from Arvada had 6 catches for 185 yards and 5 touchdowns, almost scoring every single time he caught a touchdown in Arvada's win against Prospect Ridge Academy. And I'm actually going to get eyes on Ariano here on Thursday in the Arvada versus Littleton game I will be attending. I'm very excited for that, mainly because, I'll have the fuel of checking out a Playmaker of the Week from Week 1 in Jariah Ariano out of Arvada, the 2A Playmaker of the Week. Now for 3A, Gideon, once again, had a few options here. Jonathan Gonzalez out of Pueblo County had 82 rushing yards, a rushing touchdown, and then 123 receiving yards and 2 receiving scores, being able to get it done in both ways that way. Deshaun Wilson out of Sierra had 2 picks, one of which was a game-sealing pick 6 in a 1-score win over Littleton. Jaden Hoffman went nuclear, going for 257 pass yards, 4 passing touchdowns, 50 rushing yards, and also a come-from-behind win, being down 22 in the third quarter over Canyon City. So a big performance out of the quarterback from Severance there, not to mention his younger brother, Jeremiah, who also had an absurd amount of yards. But ultimately, Gideon's going to give Week 1 3A Playmaker of the Week to Rylan Money Cooney. 144 pass yards, 133 rush yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and then on defense had 4 tackles, a tackle for loss, and a sack. Gideon said, due to how big this win was over another highly regarded 3A squad and how much sheer dominance he exerted over the field on both sides of the ball, is what gives Rylan Money Cooney the Week 3 Playmaker of the Week. Now for 4A, I had some options here. Junior watch list receiver Max Mervin caught for 217 yards. Even in a loss, Kurt Rossner and Tanner Turch both went nuclear. Kurt Rossner with 5 touchdowns passing. Tanner Turch catching for 263 yards and 3 scores. And, there's also a couple of other options like Adrian Rico or Ryan Bobick, another wide receiver quarterback duo who had 5 touchdowns between the two of them and 144 yards. And then there was Derek Hester, who did complete 75% of his passes, limiting turnovers and punching it in for 3 scores while leading the team in carries against a very sturdy Montrose defense. All of these are very impressive, but I'm going to give it to the guy who pushed his team into the top 10 of the power rankings with the win, and that was Gavin Lockett, scoring 2 rushing touchdowns and then throwing a 70-yard score here. And that is going to be my Week 1 4A Playmaker of the Week, Gavin Lockett out of Pueblo West. Now, last but certainly not least, Simon had a couple of guys to choose from for 5A here. So he looked at Regis Jesuit's Anthony Medina, who had over 150 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns in their win over Valor Christian. Mountain Vista with Jack Blyce, who had 70 yards and a touchdown rushing, and then 3 receptions for 67 yards and 2 scores. Brady Vodka, who tossed 2 touchdowns and ran for 1 in the big win over Ralston Valley. But ultimately, we'll go with the unofficial stats and performance of Westminster's quarterback Mason Hewitt here. 17 of 24, 321 yards, 5 passing touchdowns, 182 rushing yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. So 7 total touchdowns in their 50-point performance, including the game-winning passing touchdown with 29 seconds left in their 50-48 win over Far Northeast. This might be the first Westminster Wolf here to win Playmaker of the Week. And so just as a recap, the Week 0 Playmakers of the Week were in order of classification, 1A to 5A, Caleb Camp of Buena Vista, Taylor Hayes of Basalt, Mason Markovich of Glenwood Springs, Brody Gray of Monarch, and Jack Wagner of Ralston Valley for Week 0 Playmakers of the Week, brought to you by Code Red Coaching. And then for Week 1, we went with Ryan Sullivan of Meeker, Jariah Ariano of Arvada, Rylan Cooney out of Holy Family, Gavin Lockett out of Pueblo West in their win over Dakota Ridge to get into the top 10 of our power rankings, and then Mason Hewitt, sorry if I'm saying that name wrong, or Kiewet, from Westminster in their win over Far Northeast. Thank you so much for Code Red Coaching. Once again, the grind to greatness starts with the mind. Check them out at coderedcoaching.com for bringing you and us the Week 0 and 1 Playmakers of the Week. And thank you all so much for tuning into this edition of Playmakers Corner. I have been your showrunner for this, joined by Gino, Gideon, and Coach V. And we're looking forward to next week's recap, where we'll only have to recap 1 week's of games. But stay tuned for all of our content on Thursday with our Games of the Week, announcing which games we plan on attending. And then for our recap next Tuesday, and all of the highlights that we'll have on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. Just make sure to follow us on all those social medias. Playmakers Corner on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, and then at Playmaker Corner on Twitter, where you can see all of our social media posts, covers for episodes, and be notified when episodes come out. And then be sure to subscribe, follow, like on any place that you listen to podcasts, whether that's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and we also post episodes to YouTube, so please let us know and subscribe so that we can get those videos continued going for you. But like I said, I have been your showrunner, Kodey Stauffer, and peace.